Yeah, it's
But I don't know.
I just flew this morning on my way.
Okay, we're going to call to order the regular city council meeting of March 25th, 2024. Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Vixen,
Here.
Salvia,
Here.
Hauser,
Here.
Jones,
Here.
King,
Here.
Sage,
Here.
Trent.
here.
Thank you. Would you please all rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Excuse me. Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight on a beautiful spring night now, I would say. First, we're going to go to public comment, scheduled and non-scheduled. Is there any public comment first of something that's not on the agenda tonight? Ms. Russell, come on up. Welcome back.
Well, first of all, I want to congratulate, this is the first time I've been here since the newly elected officials, and greetings, Kim Russell, 345 Lysander Street. Didn't do that right. And so, and Ms. King for coming on board. I'm very excited about that. Mayor and Mayor Pro Tem. First of all, thank you for your time. I know to read a packet and to be diligent about that, it takes a lot of time and effort, so I thank you for that. I'm not going to talk about the bed and breakfast, and I mean the Airbnb. I will save that for that time, but I would like to talk about the cannabis and OPC. So I'll start with the most passionate about OPC. So I believe, I could be wrong, for the first time since the minibus have run for decades, they will be not taking medical people to their appointments. So my mom, as many of you know, is on dialysis. She was informed today that they will not be driving on Good Friday or Easter Monday. Now, for our family, it's okay because we can, juggle our schedules and make it happen. But there's a lot of people at dialysis that cannot make that happen. So I am disappointed to hear that. I'm not sure who serves on the OPC board. Nancy, did you know anything about that?
No, I was unaware of that, and I agree with you. We have a lot of tax dollars coming for transportation through the OPC. We have a new transportation director. We've got lots of buses. We've got lots of bus drivers. The board was not aware of that schedule change, so I will get into that.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And then the other thing is, I know you all know that you're a policymaking board. You do a great job, and I do appreciate that. I do want to address the cannabis, the sales on what's going on, because signatures are now being collected again at the post office, at the library. They will be starting probably in the park when things get nice. And this is a policymaking board, and I do appreciate the mayor addressing that we were overwhelmed by voters of taking down the cannabis on Main Street, on our main streets. And I do appreciate that. When our signatures are collected and they solicit in our neighborhoods, do they have to sign up as solicitors like any other? Okay. And then the timing of the ballot is going to be critical because we have a big election coming up. So I really encourage more conversation on this topic. And I think we had an overwhelming no. It's because we put our citizens, not council, not the administration, but citizens came together with their talents, their time, their finances. And it takes great communication and awareness of what's going on. And if we don't put some kind of policy into play, it gives the opponents the opportunity to put them wherever they want to. Now, I wish I took a picture of the ballot because I don't know if they say not on Main. I don't know what the ballot actually says, and I will try to get a picture of that. But I think it's really important to have a deeper conversation and to see what is happening in other communities with the cannabis sales, plus and minus. I think you'd be shocked about what is happening to some of the communities with these cannabis sales. The other thing that I think that's really important is the people that came to the poll watching this last time, they were driven here from Grand Rapids. There was not one person here from our community. And once we told them about it, they were surprised what was happening here in Rochester. So I guess my plea to you is to really have a deeper conversation of what this policy could look like. And then let the vote of the people take hold of it. But not just to leave it in a blank page or a blank canvas, because they can outspend us. They can outwit us. We don't have those resources. And it took us enormous amount of citizen participation to get this failed. So I hope that you take that consideration and you will see me back up here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Further comments? Brian, anything tonight?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are no comments.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so next we have a presentation of a Good Neighbor Award to Matthew Vanzana. Is there anybody from the City Beautiful here tonight?
There's
Yes.
4 people here.
Okay, so we have something from the city, from the Rochester City Beautiful Commission presents Matthew Vanzana with the Good Neighbor Award for making a difference in the Rochester community 2024. And we also have a little gift certificate, so I will, and congratulations.
I'll read a couple
Oh, Rachel.
So this is the nomination from his neighbor,
You should go up to the mic, Jim's, it's on TV.
Thank you.
We'll get a picture of the three of us first.
Okay.
And then I'll sit down.
Okay, Rachel, oh, good, she'll send me one.
This is the nomination from his neighbor, Gail. It's my pleasure to nominate Mr. Matt Vazana of Oak Street for the City of Rochester Good Neighbor Award. While only living in the community for a year or so, he has exemplified what it means to be a good neighbor in the City of Rochester, not only to the people living around him, but to the community as well. He has become a positive influence for the neighborhood in his short tenure. He's a member of the Chamber of Commerce and demonstrates interest and care in his community. He has helped neighbors take care of their property when they were unable to do so. He helps them do various yard work and assists in helping somebody learn how to walk their son's dog that they were having trouble with in their son's absence. So now that person can take care of the dog better. Matt has helped with leaf blowing, snow blowing, and quite literally picked up an elderly neighbor who had fallen while attempting to clean up their yard after a severe snowstorm. Has helped with trees being down. In conclusion, Matt is an outstanding neighbor, and therefore I'm nominating him for the Good Neighbor Award. His involvement with his immediate neighbors and local community has a positive impact. He has my full support to receive the Good Neighbor Award. So we accepted this nomination, and then we received another one for the same person, which has not happened before. So Robert Teitler, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, also nominated him and had a lot of similar examples. Matt has helped with plowing the snow along the sidewalks and driveways, cleaning yards when tree and debris has fallen, trimming the trees that interfere with wires, moving heavy materials off a porch when somebody had a basement issue with a flood. So then he just requests that we pay attention to good neighbors and try to make life better for all of us, and so he wanted to recognize Matt.
Nice.
You want to say a quick word?
Yeah, Matt, come up. So he gets a $50 gift certificate for downtown that you can enjoy that at your leisure.
So we've actually lived in the Rochester community for 22 years now, but we moved downtown, and we're lucky enough to end up with some wonderful neighbors. And I guess Muhammad Ali said it best, service to others is the rent we pay for our room here on earth, so just try and pave it forward. So, thank you all.
Thank you
Appreciate
very
it.
much. All right. Next is a consideration of the minutes of the regular meeting of March 11th, 2024.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Sage. Support. Support by Councilmember Hauser. Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Vixen,
Yes.
Salvia,
Yes.
Hauser,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
Sage,
Yes.
Trent.
Yes.
Thank you. Next is approval of the consent agenda. First is a consideration to approve the downtown Rochester's Makers Market event. Next is a consideration to hold the Gun Violence Awareness Month Orange Ribbon Campaign. Next is a consideration to approve the Rah Rah Earth Day 5K Run event. And finally, consideration to approve the Shine Bright Family Run. Lots of racing to be done. Councilmember Trent.
I make a motion
Motion by Councilmember Trent,
on the consent agenda, A through D.
A through D. Support by Councilmember Jones. Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Vixen,
Yes.
Salvia,
Yes.
Hauser,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
Sage,
Yes.
Trent.
Yes.
Thank you. Next, there are no old business or table items. First is a public hearing. It's a public hearing for consideration of special project and site plan approval for 100 Diversion, 110, and 100 South Street. So, Mr. City Manager, and we can have the applicants up, I will say, they have been to the Planning Commission many a time, but they have not been before this board yet. And, Mr. City Manager, you want to say why it's here?
I will. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I think it's been about a 3-year journey that we started with the first iteration down on what we've referred to as the old cement plant. There's 2 different projects here. When Mr. Epping comes up, we're going to treat these like we did at the Planning Commission as it's a campus-style development. So he'll make a presentation that shows how the 2 of them integrate, but we will have separate public hearings for the diversion site, the preserves, and then 210 diversions separately, technically. So this process started again. It's gone through a lot of different iterations. The developer, Mr. Joe LaChurco, has had a great history here in Southfield. 202 Walnut, I think that was your first property that you built, where the condos are above at the corner of Third and Second and Walnut. And then Joe was also a very important developer in the First Street Loft project. So he's had a history here, residential, all kinds of different things. So he's had this property under contract for quite a while. And first, it was just the cement plant, which is just as you make the curve on diversion. And then he was able to get the property next to that. I think Jonathan Crane owned that property for decades, right up against the bridge above. And there's a little property there, zoned office, and Video will go through all that in her presentation, and as will Mr. LaChurco. So they came in, and as we are in the throes of this master plan for going on 9 years now, unfortunately, originally it was designed to meet the new zoning classification. That was the goal. Didn't want to do a special project, just wanted to rezone to the property, the Riverfront District, I believe it was called, but we haven't got there yet. So the only other venue we could use was a special project to get this done, because it's zoned industrial, a piece of the little building, of the building to the east is zoned office. Again, Video will go over that. So tonight, though, we're not here technically for site plan approval. So that jurisdiction is held by the Planning Commission. So they went through a series of public hearings. They approve a site plan subject to City Council approving the special project. So not a special use, this is a special project. So in order to accommodate this, because it was not allowed in the industrial district, they asked for the special project. And again, Mr. LaChurco and Video will go over what things they've done for the community to tie sidewalks and things like that, clean up the site as part of their community benefit. So it's been a journey. We appreciate their patience. I think you're going to be impressed with the development. Planning Commission tweaked this, I'm sure a little frustrating for the developer, but I think we came out with a really good product on both ends. So we'll start with Vidya and have Vidya go through her presentation, and then the developer will come up and do theirs.
Welcome, Vidya.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. So as City Manager Banda summarized, this is the former Van Horn trucking facility, and the site at this time is zoned I2, which is the Industrial 2 district. I will put up the site plan on the screen. So this site is the former Van Horn trucking facility, and typically in an I2 district, we do not permit residential uses, as a result of which the applicant is seeking special projects approval from the City Council in order to make this multiple family residential use happen. As Mr. Banda mentioned, in the 2014 master plan, the site was originally designated as a district called River's Edge. Subsequently, in the master plan that was adopted in 2022, it was renamed to Multiple Family Mixed Residential District. So the proposed development that preserves meets the intent and what is required of a multiple family mixed residential use. That is to say that if the site had actually been rezoned to that designation, the applicant may not need special projects approval before the body tonight. So they have made sure to design it to comply with what might future be the zoning designation of the site. This project did appear before the Planning Commission on multiple occasions, starting with revisions to their entire drawings to come up with new designs. The last time they were before the Planning Commission was on March 4th, at which time a public hearing was done and they received site plan approval and a recommendation for special projects approval. The proposal is to construct 2 detached multiple family residential buildings, each with 36 units for a total of 72 units itself. The site as a whole comprises of 3 parcels of land. So as a request for site plan approval, the condition was to combine all 3 parcels into a single tax parcel ID itself. The buildings in this district are required to comply with the setbacks for the I2 district, which does not make sense since this is a residential use, and the applicant has designed it to comply with the RM2, which is the master plan designation for the site. The site is designed to comply with the setbacks envisioned for this district itself. There is a single point of access into the site of diversion where it curves. This is a 2-way access drive that provides circulation through the site, and it goes to the lower level, the first floor level of this building and this building, both of which have parking on their lower levels. There is ample circulation in the lower level parking area also for in and out of traffic, and the proposal has been reviewed by the fire chief and also approved. As in the case of any big or special project, the applicant was required to perform a detailed traffic impact study. And they hired Fleece and Vanderbrink, which is a very well-known traffic engineering firm, to do a study of this proposal. So the basic intent of a traffic study is to study the level of service at all nearby intersections. The level of service is referred to as LOS. And it goes anywhere from A, showing that the intersection functions at its best ability, to F, which is the delays are so much that the intersection is considered to be failing. Based upon Fleece and Vanderbrink's review of the traffic patterns in this area, the Rochester Road diversion westbound approach is the one intersection that currently functions at a level of service E. And once this development is built, it will continue to function at a level of service E. The only way to ever improve that level of service is to change the signal timing at Rochester Road and diversion. But the problem, the consequence of doing that is anytime you change the signal timing at one intersection, it will have a domino effect on all of the other intersections down on Rochester Road, creating delays in other intersections and affecting their level of service. It is not possible to adjust all of them in tandem. So based upon the study done by Fleece and Vanderbrink, at this time, leaving that intersection at its current level of service is the most advisable decision. And the proposed development will add traffic, but not enough to materially affect its functioning. City Manager Banda had also clarified to the Planning Commission that as a former trucking facility, this site used to have a lot more truck traffic going in and out of it, with a greater impact on the neighborhoods and the city streets compared to the proposed residential development at this time. With regard to pedestrian access, there are sidewalks along the frontages of all buildings. There is also going to be a new sidewalk along the site's Diversion Street frontage. The applicant is planning to incorporate a walkway, which is called a river walk, which will go all the way along the edge of the Clinton River. It forms a loop around the detention pond on the west side of the site, and it winds down on the south side of the site and connects back to diversion. So it creates a complete pedestrian pathway around the site, connecting back to diversion, and also developing the Clinton River frontage as an amenity for pedestrians who would like to walk over here. Based upon the site's off-street parking requirements, the applicant the project meets all of the standards between the parking provided on the lower level and the surface parking. They have more than adequate parking. They do have one space designated in front of each building called ride share, basically for Uber, Lyft, or any other drop-off, which we believe is a good site design for a multiple family residential building. One of the important components of a project of this scope is architecture, and that is where the applicant was at the Planning Commission meeting, was stuck at the Planning Commission level for a significant period of time because the Planning Commission wished the applicant to revise the elevations. I am trying to center the drawing for the Planning Commission to see, for the council to see, I'm sorry. So the proposed building is now being revised so that it will include a significant amount of brick on its facades. Previously, brick was not the primary component. However, at this time, there are brick veneer in two different colors, black and earthstone brown, hardyboard panels between the windows, and composite longwood siding, which is basically steel siding, but it looks similar to wood. The top of the building is provided with aluminum coping, and in response to the Planning Commission's concerns, the applicant also included full balconies on the western facade of the buildings so that the view from those units to the Clinton River will be improved upon. There is a colored rendering that I shall scroll down to and put it on your screen that gives a more impressive viewpoint of how this building is going to look. So this is basically, when you enter the site, this is the front part of the building that you would see. And to the right, this is the end cap. So this would be the view from the detention pond end of the site, and diversion and the bridge are at the far end of your screen. So the proposed color palette, while modern with the use of brick, balconies, and the longboard siding, it gives it a modern, yet not a starkly different appearance than the surrounding areas. It fits into the area very well. The applicant has got a 3D model of this whole proposal, which they will be presenting, which gives a better visual idea of how this project will look from the bridge and as you drive down on diversion. There is a detailed landscape proposal. The applicant is providing a lot of trees. Some trees on the site are being removed, and in order to meet the ordinance requirement for replacement trees, the applicant is more than exceeding the amount of trees that are required. There is going to be a significant amount of trees planted along the site's Clinton River frontage and also on the south sides of the site. Right next to the preserves is the other project, which is also on your agenda tonight for consideration, 210 Diversion. Since 210 Diversion does not have much area for landscaping to be placed, the applicant has added extra landscaping to the site of the preserves, which is contiguous with 210 Diversion, in order to provide for the required or exceed the amount of trees required for the site itself. With regard to lighting, we always emphasize lighting being an important part of a building's image, and the proposed fixtures are all in keeping with the architectural quality of the building. The applicant is also proposing bollard lights along the river walk in front of Clinton River frontage so that people can use the walk even after sundown. With regard to signage, the applicant has revised the original sign proposed for this building, which was more industrial in its design. At this time, the sign proposed is in keeping with the architecture, which will also be shown when the applicant does their presentation. One of the main questions that the Planning Commission has frequently had on proposals like this is, since the site is so much lower than the bridge, Are we going to be seeing rooftop mechanical units while driving on the bridge on Main Street? And are we going to see conduits on the outside of the building? And the applicant clarified that all mechanical units and conduits will be located inside the building. There will be nothing placed on the rooftop or visible from the bridge. So the image that the applicant is presenting is what will be seen without any units on top of the building itself. All special projects are required to go through a sustainability evaluation study. This is based on the 20 indicator points worksheet that the city had adopted several years ago. It was fine-tuned in 2021 to recognize the fact that an industrial building cannot possibly score any points for residential or, creation of amenities. So the worksheet was adjusted. At this time, the applicant has submitted a sustainability evaluation worksheet, and based upon our review of the proposal, the project scores 14.5 points out of 20. This project meets all of the standards for environmental health, mobility, and physical strength. Although it's located in the DDA and it impacts the DDA, the applicant was not able to score many points for that category because it's a purely residential use. It's not creating any business. Therefore, they were not able to earn any points for that aspect. And the criteria in which they could not get any points was housing affordability. At the time the original worksheet was done, the baseline data for housing affordability was different. In the post-pandemic era, the cost of building materials, the cost of construction has gone up significantly, as a result of which the baseline for what is considered as affordable or what is the baseline data needs to be revisited at this time. This was something we discussed at the Planning Commission meeting. When the sustainability worksheet was originally adopted, the City Council and the Planning Commission had recognized that this is a worksheet that is a work in progress and at times would need to be revisited and adjusted based upon development patterns and the change in prevailing conditions. At this point, we believe the project as proposed to the city is a sustainable project and will definitely be an asset to the community. This was a former brownfield site. The applicant has done detailed environmental studies on it. The site will be cleaned up, developed in accordance with what the master plan envisions for this area, and will also preserve the Clinton River frontage as an amenity for the community by creating the walkways. As City Manager Banda had mentioned, this project is contiguous with the Diversion Street project. So I will just go ahead and review the Diversion Street project also because the applicant's presentation will cover both of these projects. So on the screen before you is the proposal for 210 Diversion. On the left side of 210 Diversion, to its west, is where the Preserves project is located that I just reviewed for you. If I zoom into the project, you can see the Preserves property is a small rectangular parcel of land, and it does have an additional parcel of land to its south, which is located within the city of Rochester Hills. This parcel is an integral part of 210 Diversion and is not to be built upon and will be preserved as a natural open space in its current condition. If City Council grants a special projects approval to the project, that parcel will never be built upon. It is innately and forever tied to the 210 Diversion project itself. This project, once again, is unusual in the fact that it is a split-zoned parcel. A portion of this parcel is zoned I2 and a portion of the parcel is zoned O2, restricted office. Now, in the restricted office district, multiple family residential units or apartments are permitted on the upper floors. In the I2 district, residential uses are not permitted. In order to resolve that, the applicant is proposing this project also as a special project for City Council's consideration. Once again, as in case of the Preserves, this site too is master planned for multiple family or mixed residential use and received a recommendation from the Planning Commission at its meeting on March 4th. This site has a single point of access once again of diversion, and it's a two-way access drive that provides access into a parking area in front of the building. This is a detached garage building. This has individual garage units to serve some of the apartments that are located in 210 Diversion. The lower level of this building also has 8 parking spaces. The rest of the parking spaces are surface spaces itself. The traffic study that I previously mentioned by Fleece and Vanderbrink is very much applicable to this proposal also. With only 21 units and 4-story building, the site does not add a significant amount of traffic to the traffic study that was done. The study that was done by the applicant's consultant took into account this project too. And once again, the level of service, the only intersection that was a point of concern was westbound Rochester Road and diversion. And that intersection will continue to function at its current level with no improvement, but not with any significant deterioration either. The site meets all of its parking requirements. With regard to sidewalks, the Preserves is going to be building a sidewalk to the edge of their property, and that sidewalk will continue along the frontage of the subject site. This is an unusual site for one more reason, in the fact that if you look at the property line suddenly jogs down and then becomes a rectangle, creating the small pocket which is actually part of Diversion Street's right-of-way. It's not really a right-of-way on which you can build a street because it does not work for the geometry or the functioning of the street. However, this portion of the parcel does not technically have frontage onto the curve of diversion because this happens to be a part of the right-of-way itself. The applicant is proposing landscaping, significant landscaping for the site. The landscaping comes in the form of trees in this front area. Since these trees are located within the city's property, the city council in its action will have to approve and authorize the applicant's planting of trees within the right-of-way. In addition, there will be a row of evergreen trees, hedge, planted along the west property line. Since the building is located at the west property line, the landscaping is technically going to be located on the property of the Preserves. The applicant will be granting a permanent landscape easement for the placement of those trees within the Preserves property, but it will be tied to 210 diversion. And the applicant will also have to execute an access easement which will allow 210 diversion to get onto the Preserves property in order to do any maintenance or other work on this portion of the building itself. With regard to tree removal, the site had very few trees. The applicant is proposing to remove those. Some of those trees will be replaced. However, the applicant will be paying into the city's tree fund for 9 additional trees. As I previously mentioned, although there is no room for trees on this site, the amount of trees that are being placed on the Preserves makes up for it. But the applicant will be required, since the shortage of trees is on the site, they will be paying for 9 additional trees into the city's tree fund. In addition to that, this rectangular portion has also got multiple trees that you can see denoted by these circles. All of these trees will remain. And the reason the applicant is not touching this parcel is it is heavily wooded, it's also a bit wet, and there is a steep grade change, as a result of which leaving it in its natural state is the best thing to do for this parcel. With regard to the east side of the parcel, all of this is right-of-way that is owned by MDOT. MDOT does not intend to make any changes or develop this area, and once again, there is a grade difference in this area, and this parcel also is likely to remain in its current condition, and nothing will ever be built upon this parcel. So the existing landscaping does provide adequate screening on the east and south side of the parcel, and the applicant will be planting additional landscaping on the west side itself. The site is providing the required lighting. I shall go to the building elevations. The proposed design of 210 diversion is done with the same materials as was proposed for the Preserves in order to tie the two buildings together and give a cohesive appearance. This is the appearance of the building from Diversion Street itself. The materials and the color palettes are similar. The applicant has provided a 3D visual showing Clinton River up in the background over here. Once again, it is brick in 2 different colors, and this is longboard siding that looks just like wood. There is aluminum coping on top of the building. It is a modern appearance for the structure itself. The detached garage that the applicant has proposed is also designed in order to match the architectural materials and the style of the main building itself. Once again, as a special project per the applicant's written narrative, the public benefit that is being offered by this project is a sidewalk connection along diversion, which will extend all the way to the overpass, which will allow for access to Main Street via the new stairway. So diversion will finally be able to have a connection up to Main Street through that stairway, and there'll be a continuous safe pedestrian walkway, which is a very important public benefit. The applicant also states that these will be new loft-style apartments that will contribute to pedestrian traffic and more customers to facilitate and support downtown businesses. As in the case of the 210, as in the case of the preserves, this project went through the detailed sustainability evaluation analysis. Although it scored only 12.5 points, once again, this project was challenged by the fact that it impacts the DDA but does not have any commercial component to the business itself. The applicant was not able to score many points for environmental indicators such as creation of active open space or planting of more trees. Although technically on paper, it looks like the applicant cannot meet those indicator points, by compensating for it, by planting additional trees on the preserves and maintaining the parcel to the south in its intact condition, the applicant meets the intent of what that sustainability indicator was written into the document for. Once again, this project too does not meet the housing affordability criteria, and that is a criteria or indicator point which we would have to revisit based upon the cost of building materials and construction in the post-pandemic era. At this time, we believe this project too meets the test for a sustainable special project within the city of Rochester, and the Planning Commission has recommended support and approval for this project. I would be happy to answer any questions that the council might have on it. Thank you.
Any questions for Vidya before we hear from the applicant and then open the public hearing? Okay, thank you, Vidya. Have the applicant, welcome back.
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. City Council, my name is Jim Epping. I'm a land planner and landscape architect in Clarkston, Michigan. I'm here tonight representing Joe LaChurco, who is the principal of both projects. Has his development team here, Paul Rivetto, our architect, Roger Burnett, Carl, others of our team are likewise watching online. I'd like to thank, before we go quickly through our presentation, Vidya, first of all, for such a professional and thorough response and overview. It makes my job quick and easy. Also like to thank the city manager, the planning director, really your entire team, including the planning commission, has been very patient with us as we've worked through the process, as well as very thorough. And so we're really proud of what we're bringing to the community here. Joe is a longtime resident and business owner in the community. We're committed to continuing to do our part to make Rochester a really terrific place. So with that, we're very proud of that. Vidya, I'm going to minimize you for just a minute, if I can do that.
Please do.
What?
And really, in an effort to not be redundant, we'll be here to answer questions, respond to the planning, the city council's questions as well as the public's. Our projects are, as we had noted, just at the southern end, right just north of the city of Rochester Hills. So in that lower river district, just below the overpass. What's great about this is we're adding residential, we're adding kind of a broad cross-section of residential into the community. We're not necessarily adding cars, though, in terms of going to the restaurants and everything. So we're close enough that residents are going to be able to park in their homes, in their garages, in their parking lot, and walk into it. So it's a great way to continue to add to the vitality of the city of Rochester without adding to the traffic and so forth. The two projects, as we say now, are very, very green. In total, we're a little less than 6 acres, about 5.8 acres. And at the end of it, at least half, just about half of it, 5.7, 5.8 acres, will remain open space 2.8 acres will remain open space of the 5.8. So it'll be part of that walkability, the true open space, the landscaped area. So we're really impacting just about 50% of the site. The great news is we are getting rid of the Van Horn trucking site. We're going through the environmental cleanup, and we're making this a much better neighbor to the residential areas on the lower side, on the west side of the city. What I'll do, and then I can show more images as you have questions, but we put together a video. And what I've done at the Planning Commission, it's just about a minute and a half. I'll kind of narrate through it. It really tells the story of what is there currently and what we're proposing. At that point, Mr. Mayor, if you have more questions, I'll continue to answer them. But rather than go through our presentation, Vidya did such a wonderful job. We'll go through this and see what questions you have.
That's a pretty cool video, actually.
Yes, yeah, it is each time I see it.
So I'll play this. We're up on the bridge here looking down on the site. The building to the right is the existing building that's there. The preserves are to the rear and 210 diversion to the left. So this is really what it looks like as I'm driving across the Main Street Bridge. As I not mysteriously jump down on the diversion, we've got 210 to our left, and we'll drive past the preserves. In that building, that's what we see then, and this is what we'll see in the future. We're adding that sidewalk coming across the bridge, coming into town. Here's the bridge, crossing over the Clinton River, and then coming back down. The current view and then our proposed view. What's great, I think, is about pedestrian activity. We've connected all the sidewalks, both internal to the site as well as all the way to the Diversion Street Bridge, as Vidya had pointed out, and then all the way up to the trail and into the town. It's an interesting area because we have that existing office building that's there, so our buildings really tried to kind of be complementary to both the brick of the side of town, as well as have a contemporary look and still some traditional materials. We have green space and pathways going throughout, windows throughout. We really are proud of the buildings that Roger and his teams have built in these buildings. Between the two buildings, we'll have between the three buildings, we'll have 93 units. Apartments ranging in size from 800 square feet to over 1,500 square feet. Very deliberately trying to create a cross-section so we have different price points, different amenities. 210 Diversion all have home office type setups with taller ceilings, so that's meant to be a little bit on the higher end of the offering here. The preserves are just as nice, but a little bit smaller. And so essentially we're saying anywhere from, young college graduates up to, young families, single moms and dads, to empty nesters. There's different types of housing here with parking, everything else within the buildings. So with that, that's our presentation. Hopefully that gives you a good description. Appreciate, again, Vidya going through the details of it. I'll close this and bring Vidya back up.
So are there questions for the applicant, Mayor Pro Tem Salvia?
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. And it looks like our Planning Commission has done a good job working this proposal, and it looks really good. My question is, in terms of timeline and construction, like what does that look like with these multiple buildings in campus? And, we do have some other developments that have been approved to come very close in that area. So what would that construction timeline look like?
So the advantage of being two different projects, 210 Diversion and then the preserves, they really will be built as two different projects. 210 is further away from the river. It has no environmental issues, no brownfield issues, and so that's really ready to go. Obviously, we have to go through full engineering and work with the city to get those permits. It would be our goal, we've already begun working on those permit drawings, it'd be our goal to ideally begin land balancing and starting construction even as early as this fall, certainly by next spring. The preserves will follow quickly behind that. They will overlap, but we still have to go through, we've already begun applications with Eagle and with all the different things, but there's just an awful lot more permitting there as well as cleanup there. So 210 will come more quickly. Preserves, I would hope that by next fall will be under construction and follow through there.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Trent?
Yes, I've seen this project a couple of times, but I like looking at it, and I really like the collaboration and the willingness that you worked with the Planning Commission, and I know that was a back and forth process, so I appreciate that. And I love the sidewalk and the connectivity to the trails, and that was the thoughtful way that you're talking about it, because that's what this city, to me, is meaningful to me and many others who move here. If you want to live without sidewalks and without that much connectivity, this isn't would not maybe be your cup of tea. So I really appreciate that. And looking at this project through ecological lens and a sustainability lens, I really like that you agreed to have a look at the trees, shrubs, and plants for native plant recommendations. I really appreciate that. That would be me if you would do that. And I also was on the property and I saw there was a lot of Phragmites. And Phragmites is on Oakland County SISMA's list of the top invasive species that have the most negative and of environmental and economic impact. So I know you're going to get rid of them.
We're going to go through that cleanup for sure. And you bring up a great point is along that river, at the Clinton River along the preserves, that lower level, we're going to create a trail. It'll be a stone walking path that'll circle throughout, that'll be open to anybody who wants to use it. Unfortunately, on the south side of the river, it doesn't connect, going further south, but it'll be a great path. We're very deliberately landscaping that. We're going to put in, we'll grade it, and we'll put in a low-grow grass that doesn't need a lot of maintenance. We'll put in a lot of native species. But the idea there is not to irrigate it, not to fertilize it, not to over-maintain it along the river. As you get closer to the buildings, they'll, of course, have a beautiful landscape. But that lower area will be maintained on either side of the path, but kind of what we call a light landscape. And so it really is meant to be a natural benefit to the community.
Yeah, I think that was all I had to say. Oh, I really like the fact that you identified there's 2.8 acres that will remain open green space. And I guess that one section you're talking about that you're not going to develop obviously is part of that. So it's nice to leave that as well. And
yeah, I think what's great is that ribbon that goes up into Rochester Hills and then the whole triangle, besides just our use of it as pedestrians and as people who live here, it's part of the river system. There's a great habitat. So holding on to some of that green space for migrating birds and all those other things is really part of Joe's vision.
yeah,
great.
thank you.
Councilmember Jones?
I have 5 questions, so just to say, it's just a few minutes.
You're only allowed 4.
Is there a rule on how many questions I'm allowed? I've numbered them.
Combined.
Planning Commission, I've watched the presentations, and they've done a great job going through all this, and so have you, and your time you've spent on this. I guess a couple of my questions are, well, I'll go for what you said at the end there. That piece of land that's owned by Rochester Hills, do they know you're building right next to their piece of land? Like, what is I'm confused about that piece of land, so.
To be clear, we own it. Joe and his team owns it. It's in the city of Rochester Hills. So that southern line of 210 diversion just happens to be the municipal line between the city of Rochester. So Joe and his team own the total parcel. It's technically zoned within the city of Rochester Hills. But because this is one unified plan, part of our open space, part of our commitment to the city of Rochester is that land will be always part of this property, will always be vacant. So we can't go back or, sell the property and someone else can't come back and say, boy, I want to build something on there. That's part of this. It'll be perpetual open space.
Perfect. Thank you. I'm concerned about the traffic, and I know that it's important to have growth. But if it's rated, if I understand the ratings from A to F, and it's rated a level E now with the factory not in operation, so we can't really discuss what was there because it hasn't been in operation for a while. I travel that path a bit, and it's already backs up during rush hours. I just want to put out there, I'm very concerned about the traffic at the biggest issue, which is the diversion in Rochester. A lot of people do that as a cut through. Level E to me is not passing in that category.
Right. No, I think that's fair, and we, with our traffic consultants, always look for, we're not making it worse, are we? And so they validated with the numbers and the residents that will be living here in terms of peak use and peak travel, that statistically we can show that we're not going to make it worse. Can we make it better? And we actually went on to identify, yes, we actually could make it better, but as Vidya points out, traffic, especially in an urban area like this, it's a web and it's all connected. And so by making an adjustment here, actually would make it worse in other areas. So the residents that'll live here statistically will be diverse in terms of their time of use and aren't going to add a significant slowdown to that intersection. They're not going to make it better, however. Unfortunately, the way, especially when the state controls that, the state's kind of in the business of moving traffic as opposed to stopping it. And so the last thing they want us to do is add more lights or add more crossings, those type of things. As the city continues to mature, though, I know that the planning department continues to work with the state and will continue to make those adjustments. So I understand what you're saying. We're glad that we have been able to add pedestrian connections and kind of help the city by keeping people's cars in the garage and having people walk more.
Yeah, it will definitely be walkability. There's no doubt about that. I know Sarah had brought this up during Planning Commission. When I looked at the different layouts, is there only one unit that has bathtubs in it, or is there numerous?
We checked that, and we didn't have that answer real clearly at the Planning Commission. Joe, am I right in saying that all of 210 will have bathtubs? All the two bedrooms will have bathtubs, so
Okay.
kind of a combination, which I guess kind of coincidentally, or maybe Roger and our architecture team actually were a lot smarter than me, that 2 bedrooms are probably the
course.
the units that'll have
Yeah,
kids, so it
yeah.
makes
Yeah.
sense. So, didn't have that
And
answer.
then the 800 square foot pricing range, kind of between the 800 square foot and the 1,500 square foot. I'm sure you have a range already in mind, because when you start the project, you have to have a range. What is that range?
Honestly, we could ask that question all the time, and it's a very fair question, because like the preserves, if we start a year from this fall, and it's probably another year to come out, anything that we said in terms of, hey, this is what the price is, what we know they will be is market rate housing. We're building, efficient buildings that we think are reasonably sized. We've heard recent proposals of some really wonderful buildings that may be coming to Rochester that are aimed at that high end. We are not that. We are really aimed at just a beautiful market rate, affordable housing. From that point of view. So if I said it would be X, per 800 square foot or for the 1,500 square foot, I'd be completely wrong in 2 years. But what we do know is that they're going to be, moderately sized homes, great kitchens, great closets, and so they'll be market rate.
Okay, because I appreciate that you said the affordability, because that is really a concern of mine. In the master plan for 2022, I'm just going to read a little section here. They said, using the population projection figure and distributing the expected growth among income cohorts according to county-level population forecasts provided by the program, current households and housing stock are compared against future demand. The analysis again shows shortages in the missing middle as well as at the bottom of the spectrum. It predicts that 80% of the future needed units must be affordable for households earning less than $75,000 annually. So this was obviously 2 years ago. I recognize that prices have gone up, but I just kind of want to put it out there that it is concerning to me that a lot of the building, like you mentioned, that's going on is for young professionals and retirees and not for families.
Right.
And we need families to sustain our school system and all that good stuff. So.
Absolutely. What we're seeing in communities like Rochester and Troy, where the real focus, and it makes a ton of sense, is that missing middle. We're not seeing, and here I would say that there'll probably be some, but a small percentage of school-age kids. What we do see in communities like this, in neighborhoods like this, is that we get young couples who want to get into the school system, that want to get into Rochester, and maybe they start off in kindergarten, even first grade here as they're looking to buy a home in the community. And so we'll see young families. What I look at for the missing middle is I have a daughter who's 2 years out of college who rents, and I have a mother who is, a senior now, and she rents. And so we're trying to, match both ends of those spectrums.
Okay, and then my final question, I am done, is the brownfield piece. Can you just talk a little bit about the cleanup and then how the arrangement is on the cleanup and what you know so far?
Yes, so we've begun talks with the county and with the state in terms of brownfield. What we know is that it's not horribly polluted, but it certainly needs to be cleaned up. The good part is that we're building buildings on slab. The cars will be the first level, so there won't be residential. However, it obviously will be clean to residential standards, full residential standards. We'll have all those permits in hand. We've already begun those conversations. It is kind of a lengthy process, both an expensive process in terms of engineering. We haven't formally submitted, but Joe and his teams have already been talking with the state and with the various jurisdictions to help us with that.
And will we be helping with that, Nick? Do we have an agreement, or we haven't gotten there yet?
They haven't brought that up, but also this is not designated to be a brownfield from our viewpoint.
Okay, awesome. I am done. Thank you for
Appreciate your
answering those
questions.
all. I appreciate that.
Further questions of the applicant?
I just, very quickly, Jim, thanks for coming. Appreciate all the work that you guys have done. It's been very collaborative and very productive as far as Planning Commission, City Council. This is more, I think it piggybacks on Councilperson Salvia and obviously what Councilperson Jones had mentioned about traffic and construction and interruption to services for the residents who live down there. I'm very sensitive to some of the projects that are coming, and I want to be assured, and I think other people want to be assured, that the city is going to communicate with the developer and with the residents who live down there as to how construction is going to progress, the sequencing, the timing, and most of all, access, as to what roads would be designated as construction roads, so they're not cutting through neighborhoods, so we don't have gravel haulers and trains and trucks driving up and down the streets. We get it, it has to happen, but if we can minimize that, and if there can be an effective way to communicate what's happening to the residents who live down there, I think it would be very much appreciated.
That makes sense, and Joe's got a great track record of working with the city, so his office, you can see this site, so
Right.
we'll make sure we're on it. The good part is, realistically, is that the site is big enough, it has enough frontage across between the three buildings, and since we will be building them sequentially, we'll be able to stage within our own property.
That's fair. Thank you.
Further questions? Councilmember King?
Just a couple of things. First of all, I just want to thank you, for your willingness to work with us with the Planning Commission. I was on Planning Commission when this came forward in the beginning and saw it a few different times. So you guys really took the feedback that we gave, and I think we've come to a really good project here that'll continue to support the growth and the needs of the city. Adding things like the bathtubs, thank you for taking that away. You listened to us, the bike racks, the trails around it, and just keeping the riverfront intact. I think we're all really, important things. I do want to raise on the traffic front, I'm curious if, I know your traffic study was focused solely on this project. Has anything looked at the combination of this project along with the First and Diversion project and how that might impact?
Okay, Mr. Mayor, through the chair, absolutely. So when we do a traffic impact study, we actually have our own base built. So we took everything potential from things that we don't think will be built soon, Mosheris and Suaves and all the different projects. So all that's thrown into this giant computer program. So it's not in a vacuum. You don't just say, oh, this one's, it's the collective impact of all the different units, sizes, patterns, where we think people are going to come from based on who they're looking to rent to, where will they go to work? Are they not leaving the site because this is a senior project? So the answer is yes, it's all put into one giant baseline, and then the developers feed into that so that we make sure that everything's accounted for.
Okay. And then my last one, and this maybe is more for Vidya and for the city manager. What happens if, they start on the 210 diversion and for whatever reason, the preserves doesn't get off the ground? This is, proposed as kind of your green space all comes with a preserve, right? All the trees, all the green space, the trails. So is there some sort of development agreement that's going to be in place that ensures both projects get done and we're not just having the 210 diversion on a standalone basis? So if you can comment on that, and then also just confirming about the bonding.
So two different things. We can't make them build the preserves because the 210 diversion stands on its own. It's got its own water collection system, et cetera. And if they didn't build the preserves, it would stay, I wouldn't exactly call it green space these days. It's pretty much all concrete, et cetera, but they don't have to do that as part of 210. It says 210's going first. We just have to focus on that. The bond that Councilwoman King is talking about is, the Planning Commission's been a little jumpy, and rightly so. It ended up being a development agreement with the Randazzo project because that was phased within itself and it had condos and two phases of the building. In this case, what we talked about was, and Jeff and I talked about this today, as an example, if anybody's driven Telegraph, north of Square Lake, on the right-hand side, Pontiac Bloomfield, they had an unbelievably complicated $100 million development years ago, and they built 4 structures there, and 3 of them were parking structures, 5-story parking structures. The developer went bankrupt, and they sat there for 8 years before they could get to a lawsuit enough to try to get them to tear them down. So knowing that we don't want something started here and not torn down, we worked with the developer to come up with it's basically a surety bond that says, if in fact you stop before you are done, you will bond for an equal amount to restore the property back to its natural state, which is just take everything out and put the grass back down. So we do that now with developments that are of any substantial size, just to cover us. God forbid something happens. Most likely somebody else would buy it, but we don't want to take that chance. So they will have to make sure that we have a bond that says, we've done this twice now, in case we ever need it to restore back to natural. So that's in the Planning Commission's conditions.
Okay, so if 210 diversion gets done and then the preserves does not, for whatever reason, some of the trees that we're gonna be going on to, the preserves, does more go into the tree fund? Are there different requirements?
I mean, you could, but in this case, the buffer, they have the easement, that will be required before they can get a C of O for 210 diversion. Any landscaping adjacent will have to be done. So even if they didn't build the preserves, that landscape buffer, because it's tied to this and the easement, will have to go in. So we'd have that basically contained, and then the rest of the site, and the extra dying trees is $3,150. So that would go into the tree fund on this site for 210.
Okay.
So I have a question.
Councilmember Trent.
So that means that if you just build the 210 diversion, that the sidewalk and everything gets put in, that's what that is?
Going under the bridge, going east,
Okay,
correct.
and then some walkability. So on the other hand, speaking of traffic, there is that cut through to Mill Street that Suave owns. Do we have a surety?
Nope, so
That could potentially,
away.
so probably there's nothing left to build in that section here where, on diversion, that we could slow it down based on
Correct.
somehow figuring out how much traffic's gonna happen. And it's not a 4-way stop of Mill Street and diversion, it's 3?
right,
Yeah,
3.
three-way, yeah.
Yeah, and if
So
Suave,
keeping that in mind,
Yep. the last plans that Suave had was to take that road, make it a public road, swing it out and line it up with 3rd and 2nd where it comes out. So even right now, we just talked to them and we maintain it. They're letting us use it, if you will, and we
Yeah.
maintain it. But if they someday develop, it would be a more formal street that would be dedicated 60-foot right-of-way, tie in, and then we're good. But at this point, it's not, but they're gonna let it continue to be used. So again, it is private property, and they could close it if they wanted to.
They could.
But we could make them plant a lot of trees.
1,152 trees, yes, sir.
Then there's the tree discussion, but
Yep.
we'll
Right, so
that's
we-
for not tonight, another day.
Any further questions for the developer? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, so now we are going to open the public hearing for consideration of special project site plan approval for 100 diversion, 110 and 100 south. So we're going to do these on 2 separate public hearings. So we're going to open the public hearing now at 8:04. Is there any comments from the public? I was about to say Councilmember Russell, but Ms. Russell.
Passed. Are we on 210 or preserve?
We are on
210.
100 diversion, 110, and 100 South Street. The preserves, yes.
Okay, so first of all, I love the stairway. I love what you're doing for the public benefit. I am concerned, however, that public benefit does not happen so are they tied together? So once we do one building, is a public benefit, they have to do it as, just for the one building?
Mr. City Manager?
Yeah, so the stairway's already there. That was put in by the credit union. So now they're connecting to it. So on 210 diversion, they would go from their property line across the front of their property, under the bridge, to the stairwell, which is already there, separate. And then if they build.
That's 210.
That's 210. But if you did the preserves, so the preserves would put in their own, but
Okay.
they'll be coming second, so.
Okay, that makes sense, and I love that you put the balconies up, so that's fantastic. One thing we did not talk about is where the walkway to the Clinton River Trail for the public, when you're coming off Suave's land, there's a walkway there for pedestrians. Did we take that into account, because it's right on diversion there? Did anybody take a look at that? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, there's a sidewalk. Right now, it doesn't connect all the way to Second Street, but once you get in front of Bob's, I forgot Bob's last name's building, across the Milltown, that's all got a sidewalk, and then it gets to the corner where you go past Angot, and then you go back down in Krusky So all those do connect. So you would be able to get from the beginning of the Milltown property all the way down, around all the way to the bridge and come back up. So they're all tied in.
Okay, and then, did I understand that there's one tax ID number for both projects? There's two separate tax ID numbers, you're just putting the two buildings together on the other, okay, excellent. I guess that's the only thing I have to say, other than, I'm glad you're doing a bond, because I was on city council when we did the Suave project, and all those trees were annihilated. And that still looks like, it's still very vacant there. And, I mean, I would love to see trees on there, and I know you've had several conversations. I've been talking about that for a long time when I was on council, and that's been over 8 years ago. So I'm really glad that you're putting a bond up, and I know that you guys are gonna do the right thing, but it really, really does concern me. And do we still know if Suave, Randazzo, Mosheri, are any of these projects coming together that will impact the community as a whole if they all get
Yep,
built?
so Suave would have to start over. Mosheri, we feel, he feels like he doesn't have to, but he'd probably have to start over. We'd still have a bond for all the trees that are required on the Suave site. Just don't want to plant them all and have them all ripped out. So they have a letter of credit for $752,000 worth of trees. It's a lot of trees. So that's still intact, and when the time comes, when they build their site, that they're gonna, if you remember right, when they were approved, they had $1.2 million just in trees on their site. So I don't think that's gonna be an issue, but so we still have that bond for the trees.
Is it gonna be 20 years though?
It'll be as long until they decide to build, so.
Or until we decide to enforce it. Right. Madam, name and address, please, for the record.
Michelle Bierman, 1001 Inglewood Avenue, and good evening, everyone. I have two questions in regard to the project. One as it pertains to sustainability, and I just want to ask that perhaps in future projects as well, one of the things that I see in regard to our manufacturing plants all over the world is a number of rooftop gardens, particularly with the bridge and the development being so close to the bridge and being able to see off the bridge. Just something for consideration relative to improving the sustainability number as it pertains to your project. The second one is relative to your lease agreements, and I'd like to know if the lease agreements for this property will allow for short-term rentals.
We haven't got to that point yet, so.
Do your other properties allow for short-term rentals?
We do have properties that have 6 months of rentals.
6 months. Okay, thank you.
Sounds like we're going to be talking about that a little later.
Yeah.
Stay tuned.
Any further comments from the public? Okay, so we'll close our public hearing at 8:09. Council.
Quick question. This
Councilmember
may be
Hauser.
for City Manager Banda. It's industrial right now, and then I believe it was O2, part of it as well. It will be RM1 or two?
Right now, it'll stay the same,
It'll stay the same?
right? It's just an overlay zone with a special project.
Okay.
To clarify, city manager, but our
Right.
future land use map and where we're going per our master plan is RM2 for this.
Video, correct? Is it RM2?
Yes, it is mixed residential and
Yeah, it's a
multiple
different number,
families,
yeah.
so that's what it will go to.
Yeah. It's a new name. Instead of RM1 and 2, they call it mixed.
So the
Yes.
request for a special project is really to, for council to agree to the future land use map that we just haven't, I'll say probably too bluntly, haven't done our job to complete and get that fully implemented.
Is that a motion?
I just
Sure,
wanna ask
I
one
can-
more
I can make a
question.
motion.
One more question, just built on that, because I did have that down written, confusing. So they don't have to come in front of us to change zoning? Because it's a special project?
Right, so it's an overlay zoning that takes the place of rezoning.
We haven't finished creating the new zoning,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
That's part of the issue.
Yep.
Okay,
Mayor
so
Pro
I'll-
Tem Salvia.
Okay, so I'll take it back, thank you. So to clarify that and to make a motion to approve this special project, this is before council because it's a special project, but it is really to approve a project that meets the intent, the future intent based on our approved master plan, which is RM2 for this site. So I'd like to make a motion to approve this special project for 100 Diversion, 110, and 100 South Street.
Motion by Mayor Pro Tem Salvia. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Councilmember Sage. Is there further discussion? I'd just like to say thank you for everybody on Planning Commission and their work. When it started out, I think we had doubts, but I think we worked together and made it into a project that I think will be good for the city and that I will support. So Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Vixen,
Yes.
Savia,
Yes.
Hauser,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
Sage,
Yes.
Trent.
Yes.
Thank you. Next, we're going to have a public hearing for consideration of special project site approval for 210 diversion. I will start the public hearing at 8:11. Is there public comment on this? We close the public hearing. Council, is there a motion?
Oh.
Mayor Pro Tem
Mayor?
Salvia.
Mayor, I'm going to have the same comment as I did for the previous motion, that I make a motion to approve this special project, which really applies the zoning criteria that's in our approved master plan, and that's my motion.
Motion by Mayor Pro Tem Salvia,
Support.
support by Councilmember Sage.
Mr. Mayor, can we say subject to all the conditions put on by the planner, both of them?
Yes,
I'm assuming that was-
absolutely, subject to all the conditions the
Thank you.
planner put on.
For both of them. Right. Comment?
Yeah, so just to confirm, so that master plan has not been approved by us?
We have approved the master plan, but we have not implemented.
Implemented
I
it.
thought it had only been approved by planning.
No,
No.
the master plan's been.
Yeah, but we haven't implemented it yet, which
And that
is
means-
different.
Okay.
That would be.
Mayor Pro Tem Trent, or Councilmember Trent.
Yeah, that was just the zoning part. So we have, the master plan was approved.
Master plan was approved, but we haven't implemented it yet.
Right, meaning that each zoning district will be
Which
approved,
is-
so, yeah. Yeah.
Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Vixen,
Yes.
Savia,
Yes.
Hauser,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
Sage,
Yes.
Trent.
Yes.
Thank you and good luck.
Good luck to you.
Yeah.
Oh, someone left their glasses here. Mr. Mayor, thank you to the entire community. We've taken a lot of time and appreciate it. We'll continue to work closely with the city and look forward to being good neighbors.
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you very
New
much.
neighbors to town.
Yes. Thank you, Vidya.
Yeah, thank you, Vidya.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next for legislative deliberation is consideration of ordinance amendment rental property 12-251. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So it started, no one knows exactly when, probably in the last 7 to 8 years, mostly in rural areas, mostly up north in Michigan. It started, and it spread across the country to resort areas, vacation areas, where people found during the Great Recession really exasperated the whole thing when people were having a hard time making their mortgage payments. Hey, I found a way I can lease out my house short-term and help make that payment. It became a thing. became a bane in the industry of the hotel industry. They pay taxes, they do the exact same thing, they rent rooms by the day. It started off pretty much in Michigan, rural Michigan, again, up north it started. Many, many communities, including one where I have a cottage, has been struggling with this, that all of a sudden you live on a lake or you're in an area on the Osable River and people are throwing parties at houses all the time on a daily basis, weekend basis. So it kind of got steam. Then through COVID, people wanted to get out and away, and it's become a pretty stabilized thing around the country. So we're not alone in this. It started creeping into cool places to visit. Some of the, I know the East Coast, Savannah and Charleston, and they started getting that same push. It came from the golfers. They started it. Where can I rent, not in a hotel, I want to stay with 8 people golfing and on a short-term basis. Rosemary Beach, Florida led the way. Those are $10 million houses that they rent out by the day. It's crazy. So again, not uncommon. So when it found its way to Rochester, everybody's a little surprised, but not really when you think about it. If you want to come in on a weekend and meet your family and the Big Bright Light Show or all the events going on, all the things that we approve here, runs and Art and Apples, et cetera, we became a destination spot that was attractive to people to come for shorter terms. So we've always had, in the last couple decades, last 15 years, we've had a rental inspection, a rental program that was approved by City Council, and Attorney Crowell will go over, but this created a different animal now when these are literally, some people call them VBROs, some are bed and breakfast. They're a lot shorter than a standard, you're the developer, his shortest term is basically 6 months. Well, that started getting shorter and shorter and shorter. I think Chief will acknowledge this, that we have like 580 homes that we know of in town that are rentals, that are registered as rentals. So our rental ordinance now doesn't say how long. Most of those are rentals that are 6 months to a year, but we start having these alternatives come up, and they've caused some problems. So we've been waiting patiently for the state to handle it. Unfortunately, we didn't want to wait because the state is leaning towards take away home rule and let everybody do what they want. It's your property, make money how you want to make it. They were headed down that direction, and it was crazy to create an ordinance that said you can't do that, and then they override us within 6 months. Well, they've been delaying this for years. The hotel industry's gone hard at them, trying to back them down. Don't know where that's going, but because of some incidents we've had lately, we thought we'll just pass our own ordinance or for consideration from council that would recommend this planning commission to study this quickly. If the state overrules us at some point or the feds, then we'll have to deal with that. But Jeff did some great research here, and he can go over now, our attorney, to go over what we propose that council would consider to send back to the planning commission to go through the normal ordinance process.
Mr. City Attorney.
Thank you. Yes, that was a great summary. The city council had been reluctant to put anything specific in for short term for a number of years because there was always something pending at the state of Michigan, and which we, as the city had expressed, hope it never went into place, because what that would have done is actually categorize short-term rentals as permitted residential uses. And it was specifically overriding any city ordinance that said otherwise. So you would have to simply allow it in wherever residential use was allowed. So, over the years, there's been a start of some complaints about people using properties for short-term rental. And so, we've been kind of holding off, saying we're treating them as rental. So right now, if someone's using a property as a short-term rental, they can do that because the city has a rental property ordinance in place. Now, when you read what's currently on the books, it definitely reads more like you would anticipate like a year-long lease, including like inspections at changeover. Some years ago when we put this ordinance in place, City Council at the time says, we want to know where they are. And so they didn't put any requirement of payment. They just said register. It's a yearly registration, and do a self-inspection upon tenant changeover. And then with the city being able to audit 10% every year to say, okay, now we're actually going to go in, because they didn't, there was some concern by rental property owners that, well, you're gonna be in my property all the time, inspecting, and there's really no need to do it on such a regular basis. So city council at the time deemed that to be okay, self-inspection at changeover. Now, so when little pockets of complaints have arisen from neighbors who say, hey, I think this property is being used as short-term residential, there's different cars there every weekend, and so forth, and so then the fire department has spent innumerable hours monitoring, because that's your code compliance, they do a lot of that work. So we've had several discussions of, okay, what is this? How do we regulate this, without changing the ordinance? And so it's been, well, they're rental properties, so they need to comply with our rental property ordinance, which means registering, which means self-inspection at tenant changeover. Well, most Airbnb or short-term rental, I shouldn't use their name, but short-term rental, it's usually a week or less. So you can imagine how many times a self-check would have to happen if you're renting your property every week to a different entity. Not the city's issue. If you want to rent it short-term, that's kind of, we said, well, they still have to comply. And we do know of one that had garnered some attention, but have actually been complying with the rental ordinance and do a flooding of inspections, self-inspections, and so forth. So it got to the point where it looked like the state isn't going to do anything, at least in the short term. So what we decided to do is to present to the city possible changes to the rental property ordinance that really address the uniquenesses of short-term rentals versus a long-term rental. Does it really make sense to have a short-term rental property have to do a self-inspection every week? Probably not, but that's what's on the book, so they have to do it as of today. And also, one of the biggest things, and I know that that's going to be a topic of concern or a topic of discussion here, is where can these go, right? I mean, is it, and so I looked at a number of different municipalities and how they've done it, and it's really, you can imagine, it's kind of all over the place. So what we've done, it seems like the number of complaints that the city has received tends to be in the more residential areas versus more the commercial areas. So what we've done is we've put together, this is not necessarily, we want you to approve this tonight. This is meant to find out where your head is at when it comes to short-term rentals. You're the policymakers, as one resident has already said, and that's true. And so we're looking today for direction on what you would want. So the city manager had said, at some point, this needs to go to planning commission for vetting, and for two reasons. One is they can spend some time, have public hearings, and to really delve into some of the issues. But also, when you saw the ordinance, you saw that we are put in language that would allow it in certain residential zone, or excuse me, certain zones and certain zoning districts, it wouldn't be allowed. For instance, we put in here that these short-term rentals, and that's, we define what that means, 28 days or less. Because that's really, I mean, if you were a monthly basis, there's not that many that would be monthly. It's usually 6 months to a year or even longer. But really but people usually don't do short-term rentals for over that. So the idea is, do we take it and we prohibit short-term rentals completely in the R1, R2, R3, R4, R5, and RT districts? So that's one area of discussion. Do you want to allow short-term rentals in the residential zones? Is this, a common thought is these are commercial uses, right? Yes, it's residential, but it's like an apartment. It's like a hotel. Should this be excluded from being able to happen in residential zones and only allowed in your multiple residential, 1, 2, your CBD, your business, your offices, and so forth? And so the language that's in there now does that. It prohibits it from being in residential, except for multiple residential apartment buildings. You probably wouldn't have that much of an issue with. Now, one thing to consider is, for instance, in the CBD, right now, that's not allowed as a principal use, like on first floors, right? So you can apply to have apartments in the upper levels, right downtown. So what I did is I did put language in there and say, in the CBD B1 and O1 and O2, you can have it in those zones, but only to the extent it's otherwise allowed. So we wanted to be careful not to create oh, well, now that trumps this, and now we can rent, every storefront as, that wasn't the intent. So, and then I thought was interesting, there was some discussion in one of the information I was reading, that, well, what about someone who lives in an R1 district? Should they be able to allow it at all? Use their property at all for short term? Possible to say yes, possible to say no, but one of the things that I saw that I put in here for discussion was an exception to have, we termed it limited short-term rental, which means, let's say Joe homeowner wanted to rent his for 2 weeks while he was in Europe and thought he could make some money, but it didn't want to change the flavor of the neighborhood, if you will. So we did put in there that in those otherwise prohibited zones, that you could have 1 or 2 rental periods of up to 14 days per year. And that's not magical number. Those aren't magical numbers. Those are discussion. Do we want to allow short-term? So for instance, in R1, could you rent a week while you're away to someone else who wanted to come into town? There's a friend of your neighbors that wants to rent it for a week or 2. I put that in for discussion. So probably not overly high impact, and probably no one would probably do it, but it does take away the argument from somebody who owns property in R1, like, why can't I rent mine while I'm gone to Europe for 2 weeks? So that's in there for discussion. Obviously there's quite a few changes. It would take away from having to do rentals, or to do inspections at tenant changeover. But we would put in there on a yearly, and that's not in here now. Councilmember Sage had questioned, why would we take out, inspections altogether, and that wasn't the intent. So we would change that to put in an annual basis, like there's an annual registration in here, so we'd make sure that that's tied with the inspections as well. So I know we've had, administration and I and fire chief have had numerous discussions on this, and so this is, there's even provisions in here that we said, well, what if someone violates it? We have written tickets to people who have violated the rental property ordinance, both short-term rentals and regular rentals. So that's not unfortunately, that takes up a lot of time. People, whether it's short-term or regular rentals, there's some people that just aren't good about complying with the ordinance about registering every year. It's an annual thing, happens every year, it's not a surprise. It's not a fee for it, so it's not even a money thing. So that does take a lot of work. So one of the things that we put in here is we've said, well, what if someone, this is kind of like a special thing that we would be allowing someone to use their rental property for. So what happens if they don't comply? What happens if their guests are rowdy and more than just a neighbor being rowdy? It's just, if they're not complying with the ordinance, we wanted to put in something other than writing a ticket. What can we do? So one of the ideas is that there would be if it's determined that compliance with the short-term rental property portion isn't being complied with, then the city manager's office would send a written notice of the violations, and you could potentially lose your ability or have it suspended, your ability to rent your property on a short-term rental basis. And in here for discussion, we put in for, a first violation in a 12-month period would be, your license would be suspended for 30 days, then 60 days, and for a third, then it would be a full 24 months. So a progression, and again, those aren't magical numbers. If it should be, higher for a first violation or no, or just a warning. I mean, that's up to the policymakers, but I wanted to put some language in here to get you to think about different, parts of this. So they could still, and if the city manager suspends a license, they, always due process. You hear about due process. So that due process would allow someone to appeal to city council. And we thought that having an appeal somewhere was important. So, that's what I have to say about this. I mean, obviously, we put a bunch of language in there, and some definitions to make sure that we're tying, concepts to where they should go. So I don't know if the chief has anything to say at this point, but, the three of us are ready to help with discussion or take questions or thoughts, and would like your direction.
Councilmember Hauser?
Sure. Okay, Jeff, thank you, and Mr. Band and Fire Chief as well. So I had an opportunity to go through this, and I think it might be easier for members of the public to understand kind of where they're not allowed versus where they are allowed, okay? So, what does R1, R2, R3 mean? Those are residential. So when I go through this ordinance, based on the map that was provided, that's on the city website for the zoning, here's essentially, and if I say something wrong, please correct me, but this is essentially, if this were to pass as is, this is where these short-term rentals would be permitted. Great Oaks Apartments, Forest Ridge, a couple of those buildings across from Jack's Car Wash, the condos over here on Miller and Baldwin, condos by the library, some apartments on Romeo and Parkdale, and over on Lysander. So essentially, it would be the RM1 and RM2, and then some of the businesses as well, so the downtown area. The neighborhoods, for all intents and purposes, would not be permitted to have these short-term rentals. So it seems to me it's more of apartments, condos, and then some of the central business districts. One of the things I'm trying to be forward-thinking on this a little bit is, and I don't want to get too far ahead, but, so for instance, the Solaronics project, okay? Right now, it's industrial. They're talking about, if they were to put this new development in there, it would be RM1. So conceptually, that would also be permitted, well, that facility would be permitted to have short-term rentals under this ordinance. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so that's something to think about, saying, hey, listen, there's already a lot of talk about that development. There's already some pushback. Is this something that's further going to exacerbate that position? That being said, and this is more just a general question, thinking out loud, does Planning Commission or City Council have the ability to restrain the short-term rental or enforcement or applicability of an ordinance as part of their approval? So you could say, hey, we're going to allow that to be converted to RM1, but it's not going to be permitted to be used for short-term rentals, or alternatively, am I correct in that the HOAs or condo associations in their own covenants and restrictions could prohibit this? Even if the city allows it, the people, let's just use it as an example, Solaronics, and say, hey, I understand the city allows short-term rentals, this is zoned RM1, but as a group, as owners of this facility, we are going to exclude it and not allow it. Is that something they can do to override this ordinance?
I would say absolutely,
Okay.
because it's a contractual situation. It's not a legal, it's legal because it's a contract. So, for instance, the question was posed by someone about the, would this property be able to use? So there's really two things at play. One is whether it's your neighborhood association, whether it's, just whatever condo association, whatever it is, that is completely separate from the city regulations. The city doesn't enforce private regulations, and they're not subject to them. So to answer your question is if the city allowed it to be in RM1, for instance, in your example, but that developer or that apartment owner says our rules, private rules, don't allow that to happen, then they wouldn't allow.
Right.
If they did, the city wouldn't go after them. It would be a violation of the lease.
Correct.
So that would be the private, the city wouldn't enforce rules of a private entity. We can only.
HOA sanctioned.
Correct.
Yep.
Okay, so, and just quickly, so the way I see it presented to members of council, there's really three decisions to make here, or three options. One is we allow short-term rentals throughout the city, no restrictions, anywhere you want, R1, R2, everywhere. Alternatively, we could say, no, we don't want them anywhere. I appreciate that you're proposing RM1, RM2, but you know what? I just don't think it's a good fit for any place in this city. That's it. And the third option being kind of what you put in front of us is, hey, we're going to restrict them in certain areas, but we're going to allow them over here and with some carve-out exceptions for the RM through R1 through R5 based on the 14 days. Did I summarize it correctly?
You did, and I'll give you a little bit of thought with that, because I didn't give you an option of completely.
Yeah, you did.
No, but that is an option though, right?
Well, I would say you have to be cautious on that.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is because when you get into zoning, if you completely exclude a certain use, then you run the risk of being, somebody going after you for not allowing a particular, an otherwise a lawful use to be in your city.
Okay.
If you recall, we ran into that issue that we had to make sure we dealt with, remember, the oil and gas drilling, with medical marijuana. You know, we didn't prohibit those originally. In fact, you know, oil and gas, we still allowed it. Nobody in the city may want that in there, but if we didn't allow it somewhere, then the argument is, well, then someone's going to push it somewhere and go to court and get the court to say.
Yep.
Then, so that's part of the thought with, you know, you could try, and I'm not saying you wouldn't be successful to completely prohibit it, but I think you're on a safer ground if you say, because you have to justify at some point if someone's challenging you, right? Why did you put this? Well, in this case, what we've heard for some years now is, we don't want this changes the neighborhood feel. This, you know, it's turning it into changing the residential character. It's turning it into business and where we raise our families. I mean, you hear that. So the idea was, maybe the areas that you really don't want it, you don't allow it. But maybe the other areas, such as the more commercial areas, you allow for it. So that kind of takes away the argument that, because you're not telling people in the residential zones, you can't use your property as a as a rental property. Because anybody can do that, and I would tell you, you probably can't. You couldn't prohibit someone in R1 from renting their property.
Yeah.
But, so it's even a little carve-out, saying not this type.
That's fine.
And that's the thought that went behind it, but I think you're probably not on as good a footing if you completely zone it out of the city.
Okay, that helps me and kind of formulates kind of where I'm leaning on this one.
Quick question, what about all the condos on the east side? Is it gonna be allowed there or not? 'Cause there, you know,
Go ahead, I didn't mean to.
well, no, I was just gonna say, there's a lot of condos on the newer condos.
There are 5.
So Village Green would be permitted, short-term rentals under here.
What zone is that? RM1?
RM2.
No, but the other condos over
Like Villa
like
Conquin,
Yeah, those are zoned R5. They're
R5,
special
so no.
uses, so
So
they would
no.
not be allowed.
Yeah, it's all the,
so those are R5 out there.
yes.
And that's, you know, if you wanted to allow that in that area, then you just take you'd shift R5 from a prohibited to a allow.
That's R5.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, no, I have a question.
Councilmember King?
So, I haven't dove as deep into what's allowed, what's not. I think there's a broader conversation to be had, and one of my concerns is around housing affordability. I think we're seeing it around the nation, especially places that have become, vacation hotspots here in Michigan, Traverse City. The short-term rental, the availability of short-term rentals has really driven up the housing market there. And it is nearly, impossible for a family to afford housing to live there full-term. They're having issues with, staffing for restaurants and shops and stuff to run the tourism industry because, of the housing crisis. New York City, for instance, they did a complete, absolutely no, short-term rentals through Airbnb, VRBO, any of those, the likes. I think that a lot of that was driven by the hotel industry. And another example is in Lake Tahoe. They have huge housing crisis there as well, and the prices have skyrocketed. And so what they have done is they have a permit process, and it's a very limited permit. And so it's limiting the number of short-term rentals, which helps to balance out, the cost of living. I just would caution, and maybe there's a way that we can take into consideration some limited amount of these occurring within the city, because what I don't want to have happen, and I don't know that Rochester is like Traverse City where it'll become as much of a vacation destination, but I think if the more of them that there are, potentially will drive out, the option for people to just buy a home to live in, because they're not operating it as a business. Somebody's gonna be willing to pay more for, a property that's gonna continue to make money for them. So something I think we really need to think about and take into consideration.
Councilmember Sage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I remember the 2 wonderful years we got to craft and debate the rental ordinance. It finally came to pass, and now we're faced with it again, or a way to tweak it. So I had a couple of suggestions possibly within this, and I'm in support going forward as it's drafted, but I wanted to say like performance standards. We've had numerous discussions here about lighting and it being under the nuisance ordinance, and whereas we call out noise specifically in this, I would ask to add light as well, just so we address it and don't have to revisit this continually. The second thing being under the suspension clauses. We're typically very polite in we'll give you 3 strikes till you're out. If we're intending this ordinance to take an action and limit some kind of use, I would propose that on your first violation, it's a 90-day suspension. On your second, you're done. The 24 months is invoked right then. I mean, I don't see the need to go 30, 60, the additional step. I don't know what good it does. To the administration's point, it's an encumbrance on your time, and I know you have better things to do than this. So those would be my only proposals.
Mayor Pro Tem Salvia.
Thank you. In the past, I was okay with short-term rentals. I'm a frequent traveler, we use them, so I was okay with them. I have changed my opinion on that. I think now, in the past, it was about property owner rights, and I wanted property owners to be able to do what they wanted to do in their properties. Now I see it more as, I feel like I need to protect our property values. So in protecting property values, I really support putting some very pretty, I'll say, strict limitation on short-term rentals. Possibly what the city attorney has put out. I think we need to get this to Planning Commission, get them to debate this and send it back to us, and let's get something on the books. Thank you.
Councilmember Trent.
Yes, I just have a question about the any time period. Does that have to be in there? I mean, can't you just, aren't people any time period? I mean, obviously that might be 24 hours. It's on the RM1 and RM2, any time period 2. Like, there's something in between, like 14 days or 28 days and
So that particular time frame, the anytime, that's only for the zoning districts that you would say it's okay to have that in there, because a lot of, short-term rentals, it's either a week or it's a weekend, a long weekend, so 3 to 7. So the idea, if you wanted to put in there, but, then you'd put in there that you can't do a short-term rental less than X days. And that's okay if you suggest something like that. But the idea was, there's not a time restriction in those certain areas that you're okay with that being. So that's, if you want to suggest that, we can certainly include that if it gets sent to Planning Commission to debate whether there should be a minimum amount of days. So I know personally, like Mayor Pro Tem, I've rented short-term for a day, for 2 days, I've done it for 3 days, all of it, not saying that what our experience is should control, but I know that that's not uncommon. Service fees get a little expensive if you're only doing it for a day, but But yeah, if you want to suggest that, like, maybe that's an area for them to discuss, whether there should be one, I think that's an okay way to handle that.
I'm just one, it was
Sure.
just one suggestion. I'm not done. So then, this 14 days, giving somebody the option, and okay, I'd like to go to Europe, and if I traded my house out with somebody with, a castle or something, that might work for me. But I'm just wondering, you're having to enforce this, somebody's literally coming in, filling out, it's gonna be like, you can swap it out for.
I don't like it.
Okay, well, I just wondered, how do you enforce that?
And that's exactly what we're looking for. That was an add-in
Okay.
for you to consider, but if you don't want that, because we do have other exceptions, like if someone's house sitting, that's not what we're trying to regulate here. So if the consensus is, if it gets sent to the planning commission, for us not to even have that limited short-term in there, happy to remove it. That was just a conversation.
Okay, that was the other thing, and, yeah, I think, so I did look this up on the commercial sites, VBRO and Airbnb. And I did look this up on VBRO and Airbnb, real time, and it was like 5 or 6 homes and condos was registered on VBRO, and then Airbnb, there was about up to 10, I guess, 5 to 10, depending. So, I'm glad we're looking at this, but, it wasn't too overwhelming to me to see those, properties. And you do have to, you can't pretend, you have to put it there if you're renting it. You can't just try to put up a little sign somewhere, you have to put it on a net, so, yeah, so,
Agreed. That's, I know the fire department and I, on occasion, have searched, the city proper, and there really aren't that many, to your point.
I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, no, and that's fair, but it seems like there's one or two that tend to draw.
And there's some that you
Yeah.
can't find out until you book it.
Oh, okay, so I just was
'Cause I've
saying.
tried.
Oh, I see. I'm not saying, I'm not critical, I'm
Yeah.
just saying, there's not overwhelming 100 or so, but that would be a huge problem. But yes, I see it, and I really like what you're making a lot of these changes.
Councilmember Jones?
My concern on doing the different areas, I understand the legalities, so it kind of puts us in a catch-22. But I feel like, for lack of a better word, punishing people that are in apartments and allowing it there, where a lot of apartment settings are very intimate in the hallways. Like you have, you go in and out of a hallway, and if your next door is a rental and constantly flipping, I almost feel like apartments are, I don't know, more intimate. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it kind of concerns me to say, well, you live in an apartment, we're gonna let it be. I understand the commercial part of it, totally makes sense, but because you're in an apartment, we're gonna allow those, but I understand also, this is complicated, because if you can't do kind of a broad sweep of everyone, like Christian had proposed, then, so.
So if I can, Mr. Mayor, just maybe to help you out with that, out of the short-term rental properties that we know we have, none of them are in any of the rental, or in any of the apartment buildings.
Okay.
We have one that's in a potential condo, duplex type situation. All the other ones are in freestanding homes right now.
Okay, all right.
And I think probably the case is that those leases probably wouldn't allow
Oh,
short-term.
yeah, true. Yeah.
I don't think
Yeah.
I've ever seen
Good
a lease, an apartment lease that would allow
Yeah.
releasing or subletting or, unless you're a college town, but.
Yeah.
Definitely, okay, that makes sense, yeah.
The other thing I just wanted to add, and maybe just to expand on City Manager Banda, the 580 rental properties that we're aware of, that's kind of like an Easter egg hunt. We find them every month, additional rental properties. In fact, we just found 20 more rental properties in the last month that we attempted 3 times to go ahead and get them to follow the process and register. And we just wrote 20 tickets of violation to those property
Wow,
owners.
that's a problem.
I'd also tell you that the majority of the property owners do not live in the city of Rochester. They live as far away as Jamaica.
Puerto Rico. And the gentleman who lived in Puerto Rico, we actually ticketed him and took him to court. And he is the one property that now is compliant. And as far as registration, it's set up online. So we've made it very easy for people to do rental property.
And this person has, since November the 15th, has re-registered his property 15 times. So that means 15 times people have been in and out of his house on short-term rentals. We do have several other rental properties in the town that have, that we know aren't doing it, and quite honestly, we rely on the great citizens of Rochester to help us out from the fire department standpoint. I've gotten to know a few of them very well, and it's chief, they've moved in again. And so I go to our process to see if they have followed it. If not, then we look to go ahead and write citations. The other interesting thing I would tell you is the majority of the rental property in town are single-family residents, but about a third of them are what used to be apartment buildings that were then converted to condos. And we find that people bought those and are now subleasing those out to other people from that standpoint. And about 80% of our blight cases are with rental properties. In other words, it's property that people have bought here in the city of Rochester. And out of those 80%, they are not being taken care of, and we spend an exorbitant amount of time with those property owners to try to go ahead and keep them maintained. And again, from the instructions from council, we do that to go ahead and make sure that we're maintaining the neighborhoods and the value of the property that are there. And we don't always successful getting to be able to turn up the politeness, and that's when Attorney Crock comes in and helps us solve the problem. So just a little bit additional information for you.
Go ahead.
Councilmember Hauser?
So I don't know, Jeff, if you want to take like a straw poll, kind of where each one of us stands on this, but I'm happy to share you my view, and just my own personal position is I agree. I don't think it's suitable to have short-term rentals in R1, R2, R3, R4, R5, or RT. And candidly, I wouldn't want them in RM1 or RM2. I would be fine with them in the Central Business District, the B1, O1, and O2. That's something I think I could get behind and be supportive of it. It puts them in a designated area. It's where commerce is being done currently, takes them out of the residential areas. And I'm not even in favor of those short-term 14-day exceptions either. I think that's just, it's not relevant right now, but that's something I could probably get behind, just to tell you kind of where I am on that.
Councilmember Trent?
Okay, so let me get this right. So these people who have the short-term rentals, you know about them, they've registered as like short-term rentals, right, already? The homes that are.
Just as rentals.
So we don't have short-term
They are
rentals.
rental, okay, you don't have short-term. My question is, okay, so that's what they're doing. I mean, hotels and, they pay taxes and fees, and if you're going to register, can you now register then as short-term rental? Is that what you're saying? We're gonna ask them to do?
I can help with that, Mr. Mitt. So, been doing this for a while. So we had 13 hotels in my former in Southfield. And it got into this, the hotels started signing leases for 6 months because they were having a real hard time filling up their rooms. And then the apartment folks are like, wait a minute, you're undercutting me by doing that. So then they created this thing, and I bet you've all seen Residence Inn. So we said, you can't do that to the hotels. You can't have more than a week stay without an exception. So then they created a new division of the hotel world called Residence Inn, where you could come in and sign a 6-week lease, a 2-month lease to stay there corporately. And then that kind of settled everything down. So this is not something new. There's always somebody that's hurting in the industry, and they try to find a way to make money. And I agree with Councilwoman King. They're just driving up the properties. If you can make $5,000 a week, you cover your mortgage times 2, and that's not helping us. So it's not uncommon. It's just another cycle of housing.
Councilmember Trent?
Okay, so just to confirm, so the property owner is gonna make more money if they're short-term rentals, obviously, if they can, if they're good at what they're doing, or they can fill it up. So I would say they should pay a fee, or like when Attorney Kraut says we're not asking them to pay anymore, I would ask them to pay more. I would.
Mr. Mayor, that is one thing that we had talked about briefly, is when this was first put in, and the mayor and Councilmember Sage will remember, is that when we put in there, it was, we don't want to charge, we just want people to register and to comply, right? So that doesn't mean that that can't change, and it could mean that, because the idea is that there would be a short-term rental license. Okay, so you register as a rental property, maybe you charge, maybe you don't charge for that. But maybe it's the short-term rental that you do charge, because it does take a lot of time, more time for a short-term rental situation than it would be for a year-long, lease situation. So that is something, what I would suggest is, if we get our head around a change to implement the ordinance, you could always, because we have our master fee schedule, so you could, and that would be city council, planning commission wouldn't need to worry about what the fees or anything would be, but if this gets to the point where we're gonna change the ordinance to implement this, I would say at that time, then have the discussion of, do we add a fee, a short-term rental license fee as part of your master fee resolution?
Yeah, thank you, because at this point, you're running a business. You're more than a rental property. You're running a business and you pay your business fees.
And I just say for historical purposes, when we did this, it was really during the recession in '08 that we had rental properties that were not being taken care of, and we didn't know who owned them. And so we kind of did this to try to get people to do it. So we really didn't contemplate the Airbnb thing at all. So to me, this was not set up for that. So I agree with my peers up here that I think we need to be stricter on this. I don't want it in my neighborhood. I assume that nobody else wants it in their neighborhood. And I think we should move this along to planning commission quickly. We need to get, I think there's, a head nodding for this. Get the stuff to the city attorney if you have any ideas. Get this back here at hopefully our next meeting. We can send it to planning commission and we can get moving on this. Mr. City Attorney.
No, I think that's fair, and I can certainly implement the discussions that I had, and if you want it back one more time, we can have it come back, or if you're comfortable, because you're gonna see it regardless anyway. So if you're good with what the changes are, you can just send it to planning commission. And if anyone has any questions, why, if this is a regular code, why would you send it to planning commission? And if that's one of the questions, it's a great question. The reason you do that is because if you were going to zone these out or zone these in to a certain district, like if you're gonna say no residential, you should change your zoning ordinance, and all zoning ordinance changes start at planning commission. So that's why we would send it there.
Yeah, that was one of my questions, so thank you for that answer before. Just in general with, you said 508 rentals, and this is a discussion, like you said, maybe when it circles back around. We have 2 rentals in Rochester and we had 1 in East Lansing, and we were charged a fee in East Lansing, and they had really, really tight rental rules there as far as they came and inspected. And I know that as far as personnel, that's a lot to, every year do 508 rentals. But I would just like to throw out there that I think as a property owner of 2 rentals, I would be more than happy to pay an annual rental fee. And I just think it's something for discussion.
And we'd be happy to charge it if that's what council wants us to do.
I do think again, for historical, the property owners, the rental, people who had rental properties were really against this. They fought this really hard. They were against, they didn't want any registration, any inspections or oversight.
Big brother looking in on you.
They wouldn't be, I would think probably.
I would say though, Mr. Mayor and Council, that we have yet to see the number go down. It continually goes up. And we've been in this process now for well over 10 years. And we have found property owners that have had the property for 8, 9, and 10 years who are the first time registering this year. In other words, they have not followed the process of rental registration.
Councilmember King.
So, I think I'm fine with sending it to planning commission, and I know a couple of you will take these comments back, but I just think we need to have a really robust process around, registering around, I think there should be fees. I think there should be noise ordinance fees. It's taken a lot of time for, you know, the police, the firemen to be out there for some of the issues that have arise. And I also think that we should consider limiting the number, potentially both on the rental and the long-term rental and the short-term rental. Maybe it's a percentage of our overall housing stock. I don't want to, you know, limit maybe what somebody, let's say you're moving overseas for a couple of years. I don't think that's intent, right, to limit what you're doing, but what I don't want to see is somebody coming in, buying up 10, 20 houses and just all becoming rentals. And I think that's continuing to happen across the country, and that's really one of the issues with affordable housing.
And that's exactly why I brought up the Solaronics. There's 45 units that, again, no one has made a decision on it, but potentially you got 45 units in there. Some investment company wants to come in and buy all those things, and now they're all short-term rentals, and I don't think that's the way to go. And that's why I'm really opposed to short-term rentals in RM1 and RM2. That's just my view, and
I agree.
And
I'm
maybe
just not
an
into that.
individual can only have one or two. I don't know, can we?
Yeah.
I don't know if you can stop that. Councilmember Jones?
Okay, just two quick things, because this is a bigger discussion, obviously. So I 100% think that we should charge, so I think we need to bring this in front of council. I also feel like the self-inspections, I know we don't have the labor to do it, but a lot of those, you know, they might be filling out the paperwork, but they're not walking in the house to fill out the paperwork. And I think that's true of many of them. And so I don't know if we can tighten it. I know you do 10%, and you probably look at the ones that don't look so great on the outside to be the ones that you inspect. But with that many rentals, I just feel like maybe we can make it a more robust program. And I bet we can't legally limit how many rentals someone buys and owns. My guess is that we couldn't enforce that. But
So is there a head nod to send it right to the planning commission?
100%, yeah.
Okay, do we have any comment? I know some people
you,
are.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
You guys are getting the drift of where we are up here, so if anybody has any comments.
Get your glasses.
She wants to be good
Got
to
my
her word.
glasses.
Okay.
Yeah, she,
All right, Michelle Bierman again, 1001 Inglewood Avenue, and I have to say I'm really happy to hear the discussion tonight and that we are relatively on the same page. As a 17-year resident of Rochester and a former Airbnb owner in the city of Detroit, and I don't own an Airbnb anymore. They've changed the regulations in the city, and I want to share those with you. And I also want to tell you that my experience was poor. Drug use, you know, people say they aren't going to have parties, and they do. People say it's a family coming in, and it's not. Because you find those things out when you know, check in and you find drug paraphernalia and you find your neighbors coming to you and they're not very happy. So what I wanted to share of my notes today is what they did put in the city. So a short-term rental in Detroit is one but not more than 90 cumulative days of the year. An STR, short-term rental, must also be the owner's principal residence, which is very interesting.
That's a good one.
They basically eliminated or put in enough clawback provisions in their rule, that they're able to then get around some of these issues that they were facing, not just, you know, with me volunteering to exit that business, but with a lot of what was going on. They also cannot be registered if located within 1,000 feet of another STR. So that gets to some of the limitation considerations that the council's considering. Also, STRs cannot be rent or occupied for more than 90 days in a calendar year. And then last, the STR must notify neighbors within 300 feet that the property was approved by the city as an STR. And of course, that's not going on today. None of us that are here that are members of our community that was recently put in a terrible situation, you know, where we had people that were arrested in the house that is being used as an Airbnb next door to my neighbor here who probably has comments for you. You know, we weren't notified that that's how the house was being used. And I liked what they said earlier when they were talking about the diversion planning is that neighbors to the residential community, and that's what was heard, and I just ask that all of you consider relative to Rochester, what it means to be in this family-friendly environment, and we don't want to ruin that. I mean, my kids went to school here, we want to make sure that it stays that, and the only thing that I see that's going to continue to go on is what we experienced the other day. Would you agree? I see illicit activities, I see people coming in with parties, and just more tax dollars and resources spent unnecessarily. So with that, I'm not gonna hold things up, and I wanna thank you, and hopefully we
thank
can
you.
nip this in the bud.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very helpful, yeah.
Anybody else? Come on up.
So, thank you, everyone. Tom Nabity. I also live on Inglewood, resident of Rochester, own a business in Rochester, and I love the discourse, or the discussion. I guess I would just encourage y'all to consider our slogan. It's where we live. It's not where we invest. It's not where we are, trying to undermine our taxes by taxing rental properties so we can lower our property values. If we need better schools, if we need better roads, if we need to invest in our property, raise my taxes. Like, I'd much rather pay taxes than have rental properties paying the taxes. So keep, those things in mind. It's where we live. It's where we want to raise our kids. It's not where we want to invest our money. It's not where, we're not a tourism industry. We're not looking to attract people to come to Rochester. I try to look at the opposite side. If I was a resident or a restaurant owner, would I want people coming here because they're going to dine more? They're going to spend more in my shop downtown. So I try to see some of that side of it, but that's not who we are. That's not our definition. That's not our slogan. If you want to open a restaurant and a shop in Rochester, do it for Rochester residents. That's who you should cater to.
Thank you,
But,
thank you.
Yeah, so keep that in mind.
Thank you, yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Leilani Ware, and I am a resident of 361 Lysander Street. And Fire Marshal, can you hear me? I'm sorry that I stopped emailing you every time that there was a turnover at my neighbor's home. I started to feel like it was a burden and I was snitching, and it started to become more and more frustrating to me. That was in October. So what happened in October of last year was that the yard became a weed center, and the overgrowth was taller than me, and I am 4'11". Excuse me, I'm gonna become extremely emotional. I can't help it. So I called, there were renters who were there, and they had just left, and I was very frustrated at that the homeowner was renting out on a daily basis, turnover. And so I called, and the city's told me to call the fire marshal, so I did, and I said that, yeah, I feel like I live in Detroit. The yard it's a mess back there. And I don't know if there's rodents or if somebody's living in there, I don't know, but it's a mess. Can you please come and look? And also, it's an Airbnb. Did you know it's an Airbnb? Let me check. And I can't remember if you knew it was an Airbnb, but he wasn't following the rules. So he asked me to please let him know on a daily basis. Had I known how important it was, maybe the incident on March 15th would not have happened. So I am a single woman, almost 65 years old. I'm only 4'11" and 115 pounds. I don't live in fear, but on March 15th, I started to live in fear of what's going on next door at the Airbnb. For almost 3, he started in the summer of 21. And he said when he bought the home and turned it all over, on the inside, the outside looks like a mess. It's embarrassing. Not that mine didn't for a little while, but now mine's all beautified. He said that he needed to take care of his mom, but he bought this house, redid the inside to bring his mom to live with him. And then suddenly, he was going to stay in Ferndale and rent the house out as an Airbnb. Well, I I just about had a heart attack and almost called the city to say if this was legal. How can this possibly be in Rochester? My taxes are high. I'm a single woman. Okay, so I tolerated it for a while. First couple months, I called the police. Why? Now, I'm not a police caller. My brother was a Detroit police officer, undercover, and is a Marine. I'm not that kind of person. But there was a domestic violence issue going on with a little child. So I called the police, and I'm like beside myself. I mean, I want to live in a beautiful, quiet neighborhood that I moved into 14 years ago. And now there's like abundant traffic going up and down my street. It's just nuts. I mean, I am embarrassed. So Friday, 11 p.m. on March 13th, I got home from work, which is normal for me on a Wednesday. There was another car in the driveway, unusually in the driveway. Usually they pull the cars into the garage if there's just one. But anyway, there was a wetback vacuum. Somebody was leaned over into the hatchback, vacuuming the back of the car. And I couldn't see who it was. I couldn't see the person. I pulled myself into the garage, came back out with the garbage, and then I no longer saw the person bent over. I still heard the vacuum, though. I'm like, that's kind of odd. So I was on the phone with my lovely, handsome boyfriend, and I said, he's like, yeah, that's very odd at 11 o'clock at night that somebody's vacuuming. So I tried not to get nervous. And anyway, so then I went into the house, came back out, car was gone, vacuum was off. Okay, no problem. Thursday, I come home from work at 7:30. My dog comes out and barks. By the way, I have a golden retriever. I'm a single woman by this way, and I said that this dog is going to save my life one day. His name is Maverick, and he is a maverick because he is going to save my little butt one day. Friday the 15th, he woke me up, barking his head off. Barking like he never has in the house. And I woke up, went to the front door walls, and there were police cars from Shelby Township and Rochester everywhere, SWAT cars, big rifles. I'm like, holy crap, I believe this is happening. I saw it coming. I wish you could be in my kitchen every single day and in my living room every single night when the cars turn over and the people come in. And how unsettling and how upsetting and how unnerving it is. And then this happens. Now it's all everywhere. 2 black men and a white girl who fled the scene, and then she got hit by a car, and now she's dead. Stealing purses from cars. From Florida. I want to pay my taxes for a reason, because I love where I live. And now I don't want to have to move. But maybe I can just rent my house out, get $6,000 a month, and I can, rent, go in a hotel. That would be cheaper. I just really want you to take into consideration that every time somebody turns over, I have to look in that backyard and see the people come out, wake up at 3 a.m. because two men are yelling and screaming at each other. And now we are being so polite, my boyfriend and I, so polite. Okay, no, let's not call the police. Let's not do it. No. But he's only with me a couple days a week. And I'm just too polite because I'm a nurse. I'm just way too polite. Well, I'm telling you, my neighbor said he has, the homeowner of this Airbnb texted me and said he has rentals to consider until June 1st. I say, screw June 1st, because I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be calling the police every time I look into the eyes of those renters, and I can tell their personalities. Or I'm going to be moving somewhere else until June 1st. It's absurd. I'm sorry. I feel like his license needs to be, or whatever you call it right now, needs to be suspended immediately. The neighborhood has become so loud and insecure, and the demographics has changed so much. My patients who come to me who live in Rochester, Rochester Hills, say the same thing. Oh, Rochester has changed so much, just changed so much. It really has. It doesn't feel comfortable. All these buildings, apartments, and whatever that are going up, yeah, they're beautiful, but it just brings more of the demographics that I didn't move into. And you don't have to care about me. You don't. But I would like you to care about every other homeowner who's a single person, who luckily has a loud golden retriever to protect her, because that's what dogs do. My dad was a dog trainer for the Detroit Police Department, and he trained all of the German Shepherds to protect people. My neighbor has even asked, not offered to pay us, but asked if my boyfriend and I could go over and take care of his yard. Oh my God. If you feel like doing it, why don't you go and do it? Seriously? I didn't say seriously. I said, I was too polite. And I'm sick of being polite now. It's absolutely obnoxious. I told my family, my friends, where do you live? Rochester. I live in Rochester. I'm now embarrassed to live in Rochester. And I'm afraid. I'm a forward thinker. Live in the light. Expect the best possible outcome woman. But right now, and on March 15th, and until this is suspended on my neighbor, I live in fear. And now I'm nervous, and my dog can tell that. He's going to continue to bark louder and protect me. So I just want you to take into consideration the aspects of somebody who wants to live in Rochester, because it's Rochester. And like Tom said, this is where we live. Not, this is where I live. Thank you. And I really hope that this gets
No, it's
passed,
okay.
but it won't take 2 years. Please tell me it won't take 2 years. Councilmember Sage said the original one took 2 years.
This won't take.
It won't take 2 years.
How long will it
how's
take?
that?
It won't take 2 years.
Well, is it gonna take till next year? I mean, I need to know what to expect, seriously.
2 meetings.
I mean, I know you can't give me an estimate, but
Well, we go to planning commission first, and it would be there as soon as possible. I think maybe city attorney could give us a timeline, but once it would go to planning commission and we voted on it and approved it, whatever was done, then it would go in front of city council. So I guess, I'm gonna guess maybe 90 days at the long end, maybe short, I don't know, 90, 120 days. Because there has to be a notice,
Or less, but-
public hearings, et cetera. You have to conform with the statute of notice. But it's not gonna be 2 years, it's not gonna be a year.
And they're not supposed to be doing it now anyway, right? Or they?
well, he's doing it. The neighbor next door, there's already been 2 new renters there.
So-
Mayor Pro Tem Salvia?
City attorney, so with our current ordinance, if someone, do we have any recourse to, I mean, they file the paperwork, here's another renter coming in. I mean, we have to approve that. Do we have any recourse if there is illegal activity going on?
Well, I mean, if there's legal activity going on, then the police get involved and address the illegal activity. But if they need to be compliant, right now, they can, if it's registered as a rental property, they can use it as a rental property, which is why we're talking about this particular version, is to maybe not allow certain types of short-term uses, rentals, to be in these. So it wouldn't stop them from using it as a rental property, but if there's illegal activity, that's
Short-term rent.
We could do is if you do call me, like we talked, and they aren't doing it, because whenever you called, I would check the records to see if they changed. If they don't change, now they're violating it, and I can suspend their permit to occupy. Am I correct, Attorney Kraft?
We could certainly see if there's that if that's the next step, but certainly there's criminal charges that are.
So please call me whenever you see a change.
Okay, there's a car there today.
Just drop me a note.
I will,
Then I'll
okay.
follow up.
I will, I'm telling you, I'm gonna get your address.
And we will move as fast as we can.
I really appreciate it, because on my honor, I will be calling the police every
Do it,
damn day.
absolutely. And I live
Yeah.
very close to you,
We
actually.
hear you.
So,
We hear
we
you.
do hear you.
Yeah,
I really appreciate
I
you
live
hearing
right
me.
across the
Thank
street.
you. Thank you for coming and
Thank you.
speaking to us.
Hi there, my name is Delia Capel, and I live on 714 North Main Street. I did used to live here in the First Street Lofts, so I know what it feels like to be a renter and have renters that are in short-term and feel that insecurity in hallways. But I did leave that, but I do have a question about, as for these rentals, the property owners, do we know whether those owners are paying homestead or non-homestead taxes? We do know that?
Yeah.
Okay, because that was my question, you know, are they paying these homestead taxes and just leaving and going somewhere and renting their place out, and do we know that they are in fact 100% homestead or not homestead? I was just curious.
Chief, you have something, Chief has something
Yep.
to say.
That's the second thing that we do is we report it to our finance director Maggio and Marcy, and they send that information to the county. The good news is the county gets the money. Unfortunately, the city doesn't get any of that. It actually goes to the school district when we do that, but 100% of our rental property we turn over for that reduction or removal of the homestead
Oh,
taxes.
okay.
So they're paying higher taxes.
We try to get them as much as we can
Well,
to follow the rules.
I'll caveat that. That's not, if that's their only use of it. If it's somebody who's just renting their property,
yeah,
who's a
I'm sorry.
principal residence,
Yeah.
I mean, there's
That's
case,
what I'm
there's,
talking about.
there's case law that says that there's a certain threshold of, you can still rent your place as a short-term rental, and you can still have it as your principal residence. It's not, you rent it once and you lose
Yeah,
your
that's
status. That's not
I'm
it.
sorry, that's
Yeah.
not what I intended.
No, I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay.
Okay.
I was just curious.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, Mr. City Manager, can this get to the April Planning Commission
Absolutely.
meeting?
Yep, Jeremy and I already talked about it today, yes.
So if it got to the April Planning Commission meeting, then in theory it could get to the first council meeting in April.
No, it's got to go 2 meetings.
To me,
Let's
or
go to
public
Planning
hearing.
Commission, set a public hearing for May, and then after that, we can move it forward.
The Planning Commission has to have a public hearing.
Correct.
Thank you. Welcome.
Yep, Alexander Russell, 346 Linwood. So I'd like to echo the words of the community here. And before, I'm sorry, Lalani, if I butchered your name, I apologize. But before that, there really wasn't any talk of safety and security. And that's really the main concern that I have living in the neighborhood. You know, the blight and, you know, the diminishing, you know, house value is obviously not a good thing. But recency bias, obviously, with what happened on March 15th. But safety and security really needs to be the focus of this. And I think honestly, I think it's really great. I think the speed that it has happened since the 15th with the proposal today and the amendments that Councilmember Hauser suggested, I think are great. And I think it's on the right path. So thank you for responding very quickly, but I just want to say that safety and security of the people in our neighborhoods should be primary.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You can see there's a lot of passion, and it's well-founded. So when I found out that our next-door neighbor was gonna be a Airbnb, I immediately called the city manager and the chief, and I think all three of us agreed that it would, or we thought that this was not gonna happen because of our Airbnb, or because of our bed and breakfast ordinance. I'm surprised this is not under the bed and breakfast ordinance. Do we still have that ordinance on the books?
We do, but it's not a bed and breakfast.
Okay, because they're not staying in the resident, okay. So, I mean, I totally agree with Mayor Pro Tem Salvia, that's why it took us 2 years, we were in a very tough situation, people were in a very tough situation, they were losing their homes. But things have changed. I'm a business owner here, I've been here for 34 years in that home. I have family that's very concerned about the safety issues. As you can see, my son just spoke to you right before I did. The inspection is not in this ordinance, so I would hate for this just to go, but I don't know how you're gonna do the noting, because I know that, Attorney Crott did address that, but you've said a lot of things up here. So when it goes to planning commission, it's only as good as the notes that are taken with the ordinance that you have. So, do you see what I'm saying? Councilmember King, she's totally right when it comes to affordability, and it's affecting our community currently. They're, in Charlevoix, they do have they have a limited number of rentals, they have a limited number of Airbnbs, so I believe that it's legal. So my question is, this has been great conversation, it's been very speedy, and I appreciate it because I individually texted all of you within 15 minutes of March 15th.
You did.
You know, it is scary. What if they had guns?
Right.
You know, what if we didn't have a fence? You know, those are safety issues for us. And we've been paying taxes for a very long time. And I hope to keep paying taxes for a very long time. The other question I have is there any legally, do we have to put something in so the people, so in Charlevoix, the same kind of thing happened. And so what happened was the people that already had established Airbnbs or whatever, they were, I don't know if the right language is, but grandfathered in. How is that gonna be accomplished? So if we do have a limited numbers and we have 500 and some rentals, how do you accomplish, and like the violations, if there's violations, they should be, I totally agree with Councilmember Sage. I mean, nip it in the bud right away. But I really am concerned about the grandfather piece of things. How does that work?
Meaning, how do you apply it retroactively?
Yes, how do you apply it retroactively?
We don't have a
We don't
short
have
term.
one.
don't, right,
So nobody's grandfathered, right?
right. Once it goes in,
Like how?
Okay, but aren't they currently registering under the licensed, what's this ordinance, the rental
Rental.
property, section 12-251, aren't they currently under that?
Mr. City
I would
Attorney.
prefer not to give legal opinions in open,
Yes.
Okay, well,
Okay.
so, but I'll just put it that way. Unless city council wishes me to, I would not want to do that at this moment.
Right.
No.
I should know better,
How
but
about we take that point away?
you just consider it, so please consider that. The other issue that I have, and it's not an issue, but I think we should really consider this, is what Michelle brought up, is having a principal residency. That is, I mean, it's in Charlevoix, it's in Detroit, you start looking at these different, cities that are dealing with this. Charlevoix is a tourism place. Detroit, I don't know if it's, is it tourism?
Yeah.
That's
Yes, it's
attracting this.
tourism, yeah.
There was some renters, and some of our renters have been awesome. There was a long-term renter that their house burnt down on Adams Road, they were long-term, but there's been problems. And the thing is, our person that owns that property did say that they were going to be the long-term, it was gonna be their home. And when you look at the Airbnb, what it says is he lives in Ferndale, but then he says he's occupied in the home, which is very interesting in the notes. The other thing is he has 5 homes. And so this is a business. And why aren't we having a business license? What is the difference between a rental business? I mean, if he's using this as a business, then how, can we put that into consideration too? And I know that we wanna be quick, but we also wanna make sure that we're not missing important details that could bite us later. So
This would be a business license.
okay, so so it says rental license?
Yeah, I mean, it's a type of business license. I mean, it's a commercial license to rent your property as a, I mean, people wouldn't be, just like today, you can't rent your property without having a rental property license. So it's already on the books, I guess, is my
Okay.
point. This would just be a subset of rental property, even more specific, it'd be a short-term rental license.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I am in favor of having a fee, and I am a bigger favor is if they have a violation that is a large amount of money, so it's painful. Not just $100 or whatever, you make that very painful. Thank you so much for your attention, I appreciate all your work. And I probably won't be back up here again.
Tonight.
Thank you. Okay, well, I think we're going to move this on as quickly as we can. Yes. And thank you guys for coming and your input to the process. Appreciate that. Councilmember Trent?
I mean, after hearing everybody, I want to thank you all for coming. I know it's, it's late, and I really appreciate hearing the whole story. I truly do, which makes me think, I mean, if we have to sit here, we're homeowners, we live in our homes, would we want somebody like this woman was talking about next door, flipping every 28 days in R1?
We
No,
don't,
we do
and
not.
as I say, I live very near there.
Yeah, or in R2, yeah, and RM1, or, yeah, I got it. I just wanted to say that.
Okay, so thank you. Okay, we will move on to reports and regular businesses. Business is consideration request to review and approve the resolution to declare Thursday, April 25th, 2024 Arbor Day in the city of Rochester. Mayor Pro Tem Salvia.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to approve that with a correction. It says Tree City US Day 8 years in a row. I believe we are now 11 years in a row.
Duly corrected.
That's a big mistake.
It was an old resolution, I probably missed it, so.
Motion by Mayor Pro Tem Salvia.
Support.
Support by Councilmember Jones. Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Vixen,
Yes.
Salvia,
Yes.
Hauser,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
Sage,
Yes.
Trent.
Yes.
Thank you. Next is consideration of a request from the DDA Board for the continuation of the outdoor dining platform program. I see Christy Trevorrow coming up here. Welcome.
Good evening, council. I promise to be brief.
Thank you.
There's a lot of important business tonight, so hopefully this will be a quick one. Just for some background for council members that have just joined the council are not familiar with the outdoor dining deck program. It actually started back in 2020 as an answer to, since the restaurants were closed and people couldn't dine inside, so we created these outdoor platforms that actually fit nicely into parallel parking spaces. So they're built of sort of a, like, decking material, I guess is the best way to put it. So we've been able to use them year after year. They have railings on them. They have ADA ramps, things like that. So the DDA provides these to businesses. MDOT would not approve them on Main Street, so they're available to businesses that are on the side streets to take advantage of. The DDA pays for the placement and removal. The business owner has to pay for the attachment of the ADA ramp because they have to be set specifically to each location. So they pay for that addition, whatever customization needs to happen. So what we do is we actually, for better purposes, we rent the spaces. I don't want to use rental right now, but that's what we're doing. Or we pay a fee to use the spaces.
Yes,
So
you do.
what we do is we work with the city.
it's
We identify
long-term.
the specific meters that we're taking out of service from May through October. Anthony and Marcy then give us a price from May to October, how much that meter is used, and so then we pay that fee in relationship to those. So for instance, last year our fee was estimated at $23,680. This year, for what we're asking, and that was in your packet, there'll be one deck less because Meeting House is declining theirs this year because Tiny's Victorian Rose is closing. So those are two that are out, but St. 1881 requested one. So we're gonna go ahead and do that.
Wow.
Yeah, so we're excited for that.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, so that'll be nice. So we're asking council to consider allowing us to continue our outdoor dining deck program, beginning as early as we can with the weather breaking in March and continuing through October.
Councilmember Jones?
Just a quick question. How many parking spots are lost during that time?
Every deck takes two, so in Brunch House has, if I can do a little quick math here.
Yeah,
Okay,
yep.
so about 14, 15 total.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Councilmember Trent.
I'll make a motion to approve the outdoor dining deck.
Motion by Councilmember Trent,
Support?
support by Mayor Pro Tem Salvia. Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Dixon,
Yes.
Salvia,
Yes.
Hauser,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
Sage,
Yes.
Trent.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is a consideration request to set a public hearing for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2025 budget for April 22nd, 2024.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Sage,
Support.
support by Councilmember Hauser. Discussion. Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Dixon,
Yes.
Salvia,
Yes.
Hauser,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
Sage,
Yes.
Trent.
Yes.
Thank you. Also, we have a receipt of the check register, if there's any questions. If not, we're on to report for various boards and commissions. First is a report from the Asset Management Committee. Mayor Pro Tem Salvia.
Yes, so the Asset Management Committee meeting met March 12th. A lot of these items council discussed at our budget workshop this past Saturday. We talked about the community house, we talked about infrastructure projects, roads, the curb replacement program, the bridge maintenance program, the parks. One item I wanted to highlight was our big Main Street, North Main Street project with MDOT has now been pushed out to 2027. So was thinking about that with the construction projects potentially coming to downtown. That's been pushed out. And then also we are considering restructuring the Asset Management Committee. We know we've recently put this committee together, but it's not really working really well. So we're considering restructuring that. So stay tuned.
Very good. Next,
I'll just ask
I'm
real
sorry.
quick, is that construction project with MDOT, is that the one at like Parkdale?
Parkdale North,
So north of Parkdale,
Okay.
all the way to Tinkin.
all the way to Tinkin.
Oh, okay.
It's major.
Not that, I was thinking the intersection realignment that has been,
No.
No, we're not,
Dairy Queen there, yeah.
yeah, we're not doing that anymore.
didn't it, we passed on doing that, but then I thought MDOT was gonna do something. No. Okay.
And MDOT keeps pushing this year after year, so it's allegedly 2027, I would say. Next is a report, City Beautiful, Councilmember Jones.
Okay, we met on March 13th. Some of the things, we did not have a quorum that night. It's been a couple meetings, so we were not able to pass some of the things that we needed to do. But we did have someone from the Rochester Garden Club who came, who had some funds they wanted to donate to City Beautiful. So they had a $1,200 donation they wanted to do, and we had some different discussions. Nick can fill in if I'm getting it wrong. But we talked about, we're gonna get a cornhole by the soccer fields, by the volleyball courts. And so they would be sponsoring that, which allows us to have some funds that we were using for that to go to something else. We talked about putting a little plaque, memorial plaque there or something that says that they donated it. And then in general, we talked about doing plaques when the, City Beautiful does something, just to say, and maybe even go with a little logo on it, right, Nick, where it says City Beautiful donated this, to get some press around City Beautiful. There's a program where the DIA gives pieces of art, and that's happening again this year, and they'll be around town, in the park, and I guess under the bridge. That's new to me. And we talked about the Good Neighbor Award. He was here tonight. and talked about what the plans would be for the $2,000 in leftover funds they have. We talked about Arbor Day, April 25th. I think that's about it, right? Okay.
Very good. Next, there is a report from the tree committee. Mayor Pro Tem
I've
Salvi.
got that one. I am the newly appointed chair of the tree committee, so.
Congratulations.
It's big shoes to fit from former councilmember Mark Albrecht. So we all know Arbor Day is April 25th. That's when the city is celebrating it. So welcome and encourage all residents as well as council to be there if you can. This year, our location for tree planting and celebration is going to be by the firehouse, right there on the corner. And we're hoping to engage some of the local veteran community in that celebration.
Can I correct you?
Yep.
So close, but it's gonna be by the memorial, right by the police station. So that the little glass, not Heroes Point, the little glass with all the World War II folks, that's where we're playing the
By the
tree.
drinking fountain.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I had it logged in my brain incorrectly. By the police station. Got it. Thank you. We still have funds in the tree fund, so that means we want to be planting trees. We are looking for good locations. We're all caught up for the most part on our curb planting, so we're looking for locations in the city that need some trees. We're going to continue our tree bait program, and there's one other thing. Oh, we're also working on the proposed tree mural in the, with the Kiwanis shelter in the park.
Good.
Thank you.
Very good. Next is a report from the Rochester Community House, Mayor Pro Tem Salvi.
I got this one too. All right, so Community House Board met March 19th. They were all very excited to hear about our discussion, our upcoming discussion, which happened this past Saturday regarding goals and objectives. They were reviewing drawings and pricing updates for the renovation. They reviewed a bank report, are focused on fundraising, and year-to-date revenues are up and costs are flat.
That's good, right?
That is good. That is good.
Next is a report from the Pink Creek Trailway Commission, Councilmember Sage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of the things that was discussed during the meeting regards the Solaronics project. And I know there's a meeting this week with the developer and the local residents. I think it's Thursday night. So in reading the license agreement that we have with Solaronics, the trail has, it would be up to Solaronics to bring if they sell the property, right? So then this license basically ends. But it would be Solaronics' responsibility to bring the land back to its natural condition. We're concerned that that will be overlooked, and the new developer could just say, oh, yeah, I'm taking care of that. He has no responsibility, doesn't have to take care of it. So the concern there is it will fall through the cracks very quickly. So we just want to bring that forward.
Thank you.
All right.
Can I ask I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
What is the property, if you don't mind me asking, that would be brought back? Oops, where does that lie?
It's the actual trail. I mean, the easement, the trail extends 50 feet on both sides of the trail. At the time that Solaronics was in business, it was used for trucks to turn around on the property. So they are no longer turning trucks around on the property because there is no business. So we want the land back.
Councilmember Trent.
So, I mean, how would planning or someone make sure that something like,
It's already, to be honest, it's already on the site plan they submitted. They abandoned it all, give it all back. They want, it takes out part of the property.
restoration, there's a
Pardon me?
restoration part.
The restoration part is
Well, that's part of their landscape plan. You have to see their plan, so. it's all-
right, but again, that's the new developer. The license agreement requires Solaronics to do it. So if the new developer just all of a sudden says, well, yeah, I'll get to that later, then we as the trail have a problem again. We get the land back, but not under the terms of the original agreement.
Would the trailways be amenable to having that assigned to the new developer?
Probably not. We want we don't want to have, we'd love to get rid of all of these.
Yeah, they made it very clear they will not assign it. So in the new plan shows a landscape restoration plan all the way to the trail. But it hasn't been in the planning commission yet, so we'll see.
I haven't seen it. Okay.
Right. Yeah, that Solaronics property that everybody in town's talking about has not been to the planning commission.
Yeah, to be clear.
Not seen it.
To be
We
clear.
haven't seen it.
Yeah.
We saw a presentation on it.
Correct.
Right. All right, thank you. Next, a report from the DDA. Councilmember Trent.
Do you remember? Neither one of us were there. On 28?
Yeah, that's true.
Sorry.
Mr. Banda.
Okay, sorry.
I hate to point that out. Maybe everybody's not listening anymore.
Yeah, so we talked firstly about social districts, so there's been some discussion back for, and I don't want to jinx this, but it was, a few of us were not necessarily in support from administration on this in the past, but we decided to stay out of DDA, kind of started taking the lead on it. It got in front of them for the initial discussion. Attorney Crott went and talked to them about it, and the end result was, we got other things on our plate right now, not a big hurry, we'll see you later on this. So they, in general, Jeff gave him a great report about how Ferndale's handle it, how there's 264 other communities that have it, so not unusual request, but not a top priority for them. Administration's not gonna bring that forward, we want someone to sponsor that, so stay tuned on that. So they had that discussion. They talked about the, now called the Graham project, which is, you all know about, which is the modification to the farmer's market lot and extended year-round farmer's market. They had a discussion about that. Did their fiscal year budget update, getting ready for the upcoming budget submission to the city, and then again, did the dining platforms, which resulted in the meeting tonight, request tonight. That was about it.
Thank you. And then there is a special DDA meeting Thursday night to talk about the Graham financing, and then I am going to ask them to come back to city council to inform us of the change that they're going to do.
I will be there too as a
I think
liaison.
Solaronics is tomorrow then.
No,
Solaronics is Thursday.
They're both Thursday?
They're both Thursday.
Okay.
Now, a question for
they
that.
are?
There's a question for that, I asked the city attorney. That is not, so typically, a board and commission that we appoint people to, council people cannot attend that and ask questions. This is not a formal meeting, so Mr. City Attorney, can city council people attend that meeting? And if there was more than 4, can you notice that so people can attend?
That's the safest route. My preference is to not have city council members there, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
My preference is not, because that's an opportunity for the developer and the residents of that area who have been invested in the concerns. I think having city council members there might, kind of squash the openness and the open dialogue that happens in those, there's reasons that developers have those meetings, right? Which is to listen to it, it's more informal, but it's kind of getting everybody on the same page. That's not such an open dialogue here. I have a feeling that if city council members are there, the reaction is to, well, what do you think, council member so-and-so?
Yeah,
I mean,
that's true.
you'll see this project more than, I mean, it's not for any short, you'll have all the knowledge you want, all the meetings you want to go through things. But this is, I can't tell you not to go. I'm not gonna tell you not to go. I would say I think it has a potential to be a counterproductive when city council members go, because whatever they decide, it's gonna be presented to you as a body. You act as a city council, and not that you can't listen, not that you can't do whatever, so I'm not gonna tell you can't, but if you hit the magic 4, it's not a city meeting, but I always feel, I'm very conservative on this, I understand, but I think you would want to notice it, because you have 4, you're not deliberating, I get that, but sometimes the appearance of problems become the problem. So that's my 2 cents. I did hear that at least one council member wanted to go. I can't say no, I'm not gonna say legally you can't go, but I'm telling you the reasons why I would suggest maybe not.
Just to be clear,
Councilmember Hauser.
just to put your mind at ease, I'm not going. So that's one
I'm not
person.
going.
Yes,
I'm not going.
I'm not going.
And yeah.
Councilwoman Jones, are you going?
Well, as you,
Was it you?
no, it wasn't me. But,
Question to Councilmember Jones.
I am concerned, I agree with what you're saying, so my thoughts of going is dissipating. But because they presented that they had, I think in proper, or in a general way, we've met with neighbors, they love this project. I'm a little concerned on what their take is. I kind of like the idea of a council member being there to hear. They're talking to our citizens. You know, they voted us in about a big project that's going actually around the corner from my house. So I'm also interested as a resident that lives on 7th Street. But I also trust your judgment as the attorney, so.
What you said is I appreciate, I do. That's why I'm not going to tell you you can't go.
Right,
Because
I
first of all,
get it.
that's never my job.
Yeah.
But I just feel that you'll have, I mean, there's no shortage of citizen participation when it comes to that project especially.
So just
So
talk to them
Somebody
afterwards.
could tell you.
Yeah,
Well,
So-
right, I mean, and to me though, I mean, I can't go, Marilyn and I can't go because we have the DDA meeting.
Right.
But I would have thought to go just to show that kind of solidarity with the
Right.
people.
I feel
Really
that
to
way
say
too,
anything.
especially as a neighbor.
It's not going to be televised?
No, it's not it's
Okay.
not a public meeting. I
Okay,
mean,
it's
it's
just
their
It's
meeting.
just their meeting.
It's their
Okay.
meeting,
Right.
developers meeting.
Okay,
All right.
so,
Well, there you
go at your own risk.
Yes.
Plan B. Okay, on to report from the Budget and Finance
Okay,
Committee.
last but not least, and are these new, these pictures around here?
Yeah.
I mean, did I just?
I was going to comment on it. They're
I just
fantastic.
I looked up and I'm like, wow.
I kept staring at that one back there.
Rose and Jeremy and Marcy.
Oh, well,
Transform this for
thank you.
Yeah.
I mean,
Did,
oh my,
tables,
$12?
New tables too.
Well,
Mo,
oh, yeah.
Yeah, Mo did the show.
Oh, Mo did
from
them?
the sign
Oh,
shop,
God.
yes.
Oh, well, thank
You know
you, Mo.
Mo.
I know Mo. I've worked with Mo a long time. Thank you, Mo. I was just looking, I'm like, wow, this is like the walls, they look so much better. That's good, art. So Budget and Finance meeting, the actual one, was on March 21st, getting ready for the Goals and Objectives one that we had. Budget meeting on Saturday, the 23rd. So what we did was we went, reviewed the agenda, what was going to be talked about. So it's quite a bit of overlap. So meaning that what we decided at the Budget and Finance, we actually moved over to the Goals and Objectives and Budget meeting. We all, the full council had, with the department heads and staff on Saturday. So the fund balance review, we went over the fund balance review. We had a real robust discussion about that. We got more educated on it. And yeah, the city has done a very good job of keeping our fund balance large enough and larger than most cities. And we go by percentages of what the total of the city budget is. So we want to have it for emergency funds and a rainy day. So you don't want to get too low. So we really defined that and worked really hard to stay within those parameters. We also talked about funding source options and then the city staff proposed their projects that they had winnowed down from the first meeting we went to, and I really admire them for, I'm sure that, they had a long list, and they really winnowed it down to things that they needed and wanted to be very careful and judicious, and I appreciated that. The infrastructure, Mayor Pro Tem Salvia talked about that, and we talked about that as well there. We talked about the Rochester Community Schools, and we all had it was a good discussion about that and made some decisions, and you'll be learning more about that going forward. We talked about the capital projects, trying to, make sure that we understood each capital project, which was the skate park and the community house renovation. Then we talked about the DDA and their district and the capital funding and the work that they do, upgrading the parking lots and maintaining their section of town. And we didn't quite get to the zoning discussion, but we kind of touched on it today. But yeah, I think that this now goes to our fabulous finance team, Marcy Moriwaki and Anthony Maggio. They will take all of this information and they will come back and have it, plugged in all these numbers, and they will be presenting to us that budget on April 22nd, like we said, and that will be an open meeting. So Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Next on to public comment. Is there anyone else who wants to come up? Brian, it doesn't look like there's anybody.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's no comment.
I think that was a no. On to general miscellaneous, Mr. City Manager.
Just one thing, so I got a little nudge from HR the last 3 weeks that you have like 450 hours of vacation time, and we're going to take 300 hours to go someplace or whatever. So my wife was kind enough to arrange us to go to Florida for 6 days to Naples. So I'm going to leave on the 5th and be back on the 13th. So Anthony Maggio will be in charge. I'll put it in writing. He will do the meeting of the 8th. We've kept it a reasonable agenda, I think, for him. He obviously can handle it. And so I'll knock off at least 40 hours, so that's a good thing. So that, other than that, that's it. And I get to go fishing every day, so.
Thank you. Madam Clerk?
Nothing, Your Honor.
Mr. City Attorney?
Nothing, thank you.
I have a question for the Madam Clerk.
Yes.
I appreciate your feedback, the note I sent. So I would add this to my colleagues. So we're looking at boards and commissions and determining on the ones we serve, whether those participants want to re-up, and the process is you have to submit a whole new application. So I posed this situation on, like, the historical commission. Some of the participants have been on there for over 20 years. I'm not sure we're going to glean anything new from a new application. They have intent to stay on the commission. So I guess I would propose, if they send an email
Yes.
to a council
Yes.
member and
Yes.
the clerk, that they have the intent to be reinstated. Are we good?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
100%.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think we used to have that when there was many candidates and stuff, but now there aren't as many, so. Councilmember King, anything tonight?
No, Rara did not meet this month. We'll be meeting, first meeting of mine will be in April, so.
Very good. Mayor Pro Tem Salvia?
Nothing, but I was admiring the beautiful art. I feel like I'm in Rochester right now. It's so beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for doing that.
Councilmember Sage?
Nothing this evening.
Councilmember Jones?
I just want to say that my first round of doing the budget has been extremely informative, and I've been very impressed. Our meeting was so collaborative on Saturday. I think we all put in our wants, and we had a robust discussion, and I was very pleased how everyone was so respectful of each other, and we ended up in a good place. So I thank everyone involved, and then I'm going to something that you all got, and it's a virtual planning about the DTE and utilities are coming and talking to us about what they're doing, and I feel like I need to know more about it. So it is a virtual meeting on April 30th. Everybody got it, I'm sure, in their inbox, so.
Tell us all about it.
Well, it sounds stimulating. I've been to
Thanks,
one
Deb.
other at the library, and it was awesome.
Tell them to work on Terry Street.
Yeah,
I know.
Mayor,
taking one for the team.
That's right, exactly.
Councilmember Trent?
Yes, I went to a meeting that a SISMA representative gave a presentation on invasive species. So I have learned a lot. So I know Rochester is going to be very interested in what to do with our invasive species. They've got a top like 10 or 12 that the Oakland County is focusing on, and they have grants and other things to help us get rid of them.
Marilyn, I'm impressed that you learned a lot. You knew all that.
Well, that was my mention of Phragmites. I threw it out there, like an expert, yes.
Councilmember Hauser?
I've got just a few things, and I appreciate it's late, so I'm going to go as quickly as I can here. Number one, I want to echo Councilperson Jones's comments about the budget meetings. They were very, very informative and very successful to me. And I want to, again, thank the staff and administration for helping me understand that budget process. It can be a little bit overwhelming, but they were very patient with me, and I very much appreciate that. Number two is, we had a conversation a while back about this marijuana ordinance, and I was very I don't want to say shocked, but a little bit disheartening to hear that they're already out there collecting signatures again. And it's this whole deja vu thing. And I know that last fall, we were very reactive in a sense because I think we were kind of caught flat-footed on it. And the community and the neighborhood got together and we really pushed back hard on that. I would like to know, and maybe Jeff, this is a question for you, and I don't necessarily need an answer today, but I would really like to know definitively what we individually and as a council can do in a city to get this message out that they're out there. This is happening again in some direction, because I don't want to do something improperly, but I think education and notice and awareness are really going to be helpful moving forward. I mean, we all worked so very hard last time, and I want to be certain that we can do just as much, if not more, to get this word out. Because I think, frankly, it wasn't until Labor Day last year that we really learned what was going on. And so, to the extent that we can get in front of this, I would like to know what we can and can't do in order to avoid any situation of getting upside down with the city, okay? Number 3, and again, this is strictly coincidence, but it was brought up here during the conversations, is I've reached out to Mr. Banda, and I know the chief about some of these blight ordinance issues. And with the new, with the weather coming up and changing, I really want to be certain that the city is in a position to have the necessary conversations with property owners around town who are not keeping their property up in a condition that A, is conforming with the city ordinances, but B, our expectations. And it's really unfortunate that there's certain property owners in town, commercial and residential, who strictly, or who don't think that the rules apply to them or they can do whatever they want. And I don't know if we need to get more enhancements on these ordinances. I know we send out a letter and they've got 10 days to respond, and then it's another 30, whatever the cycle is. But I'd like to think that we could condense that and really motivate these infractions or these violators to step up their game. And I appreciate that there's going to be certain instances in the residential where people have a hardship economically. They can't afford to do something, their grass gets, and that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about certain properties around town that we all know of, or there's an issue over on Taylor I heard about that's going on. This house has been, an eyesore for a long time. And I'd really like to see us get a little bit more proactive in that regard.
Step up the politeness.
Yeah, exactly. We have ordinances on the books, we've got standards, we need to enforce them. And then finally, I was a little bit dilatory on this. I was not here on February 26th at the city council meeting due to a previously planned trip. I was here remotely, but I was not here in person. So to that end, I would ask that my absence be excused for that particular meeting, so.
Motion to excuse.
Motion by Councilmember Sage, support by Councilmember Trent. Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Vixen.
Yes.
Sylvia.
Yes.
Bowser.
Yes.
Jones.
I guess.
Thank you.
Yes.
Sage.
Yes.
Trent.
Yes.
Thank you. And that's all I've got, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
I just have a couple quick things. I'd also like to thank everybody for the budget process. I think it worked well. Thank you for the city staff. Thank you to Nick and Marcy and Anthony spending the time organizing it and getting all the numbers together. Also, I'd like to appoint Councilmember Jones to the Cemetery Committee tonight. She is,
Wow.
We
Some jealousy down there. I see a little jealousy.
That's a
down
lively
there.
one for the team again.
I can talk to you
There's
about what
lots
I've
of
been
good
doing.
stuff going to happen.
I know.
Yes, there's good things.
I'm excited.
and we thank her for that. Also, just to note that, put that out, that on May 20th is the State of the City, so if everybody could see
It's
their
at the
calendar.
Calf-
And it's gonna
it's
be
at
at the
the
Calf
Calf
Bar.
Barn.
That's a Monday.
Yeah,
The where?
the Calf Barn.
Barn.
at
Rochester
Fantasy's
Museum.
Farms, yeah.
It's part of it's in Rochester.
And
Yes.
and after the meeting, we are going to get together and have a picture with the ladies, with all of our hats and scarves. So, thank you,
Wait, don't do
everybody.
it yet. Wait, two other things. I'm so sorry. Almost.
Go ahead.
I wanted to, because you just said that about Raya, or you said the Calf Barn. So I want to thank Councilwoman Trent and Mayor Stewart Vixen for coming to the Raya Youth Recognition Banquet. It was a wonderful night, and we love when some dignitaries come. It's a great night. And then I also had asked the city manager if we could maybe have OU, a few reps from the basketball team, come to the next meeting and honor them for the great season that they had.
So if everybody's okay with that, I'm sure we would be, we can reach out to them. So we have, Holly's got in touch with the cheerleading groups for all three high schools. They pushed it past spring break. We'll ask OU, we have Smart, Harmony, her name
Oh,
is.
is Shelley
She's gonna
coming?
come in
Oh,
on
great.
April 22nd
Oh,
to
good.
talk about the new routes.
Launch of the
And,
routes.
yes, so we've got all those scheduled. So we'll reach out to OU, absolutely.
Okay, perfect. That's it. Thank
Thank you.
you.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Sorry.
Okay, photo op.
One more.
Photo.
One more. You had.